Good afternoon, and thank you for being here today. What I want to explain to you first is that we have a little bit different format in our board report this year. I'm sure you could tell that from the PowerPoint and the consistency of all of the PowerPoints. What we did was put these together based on the new accountability model. And so what each school has done in the district as well is analyze our data. We've looked at strengths and areas that we need to grow, and then came up with strategies for how we want to grow in those areas. What we're trying to do is look forward to the future to make sure we're ready for the new accountability system in all of the areas. There are some new areas, and so we want to be as prepared as possible to be a five-star school district. So we have this year's data kind of put into the new model. And the first category is going to be proficiency. And so as you can see for the district, we have some areas of strength in all areas for elementary, middle, and high school. And you can see that we are above the state average in every end of course exam for the high schools. For elementary reading, we are above the state, and in elementary math as well. For middle school reading and middle school math, we're above the state average. Just to give you a little bit of information that's not necessarily on the slide, well, it isn't on the slide. For elementary reading, we, for proficient distinguished, went up 4/10 of a point. Math dropped just a little, 8/10 of a point. Middle school reading went up 8/10 of a point, and middle school math went down 6/10 of a point. And for the high schools, they went down six points in reading, which is an area of concern, and then math, they went up 1.5 points. So we had a little bit of fluctuation as up and down, just a little bit across the district, but we were able to be above the state in every category as far as reading and math goes. For some areas that we know we need to focus on for growth this next year in 3 of our schools, the percent of novice in math in the 3rd grade was in the bottom 3rd in the state. And we know that these students need some extra attention and help in this area, and so this will be an area that we will focus on, will be novice in math. For 6th grade reading for the middle schools, they were ranked 241 out of 391 schools for proficient and distinguished, so we will focus our attention on grade 6 reading as well. And this I don't think will surprise you. Algebra 2 end of course exam, they have fewer than 50% proficient and distinguished, and this has been a trend. Algebra 2, the end of course exam, has been an area of concern for quite some time, and we know we need to continue to work on math in the high schools. So those are areas of strength and growth, and what are we going to do about it? That is at the bottom for our strategies. We know we need to increase student achievement across the district, and so to do that, we must have professional development for our teachers. We need to do more goal setting with students so that they know what they are working toward, monitoring student progress. One of our mantras is this year is name and claim each student, and know where they are and where they need to go and what we need to do to try to help them. And then consistently use formative assessments throughout the district, and we have begun to implement the Plan of Excellence, which I will explain toward the end. I think you'll be pleased with it. And then we also need a systemic process for RTI. Each school has some level and some implementation of RTI, but we need a better grasp of that and a systemic implementation so that we can increase the quality of our Tier 1 instruction, but also target Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions as needed. So that's where we are for proficiency. For GAP, GAP will also be included in the new accountability model. And as you can see, we do have some strengths for our demographic groups for free and reduced, for elementary schools for reading and math, and for middle schools for reading and math. Our free and reduced population are above the state. If you look at the growth areas, we have some areas of concern for sure for the elementary, middle, and high school reading and math students with disabilities, we are below the state. So as you can see, this will be an area that we will focus on this next year, and this year, of course, with our students with disabilities. To do that, again, we need a systemic process for RTI to make sure we have our Tier 1 instruction the best that it can be, while also giving targeted interventions for Tier 2 and Tier 3. We're also developing instructional plans for struggling students and monitoring their progress. We have lots and lots of data that we can use, but just having the data and not using it is not enough. So we know that we have to make a specific plan for each student, and that's what we're working on. We're at different levels, at different schools and in different classrooms, but we want to have a systemic process for focusing on the gap.
Question. From my notes I was looking at from last year, this is some of the same song and dance that I'm hearing. We've got the same problem, particularly with this gap with math in middle school, and which is not just below the state average, significantly below the state average.
Mm-hmm.
It's not changed. Are we just now occurring that we need to have a systemic plan, or is it harder to get people on board to get a systemic plan, or this is what I've heard for a while?
Well, I think what you would, well, this is my opinion, I think because we don't have a systemic plan, we have bits and pieces and pockets of things that are working well in some places and not so well in others. And so the places where it's working well, they can't carry the load of where it isn't. And so that is why we need, for lack of a better term, a systemic plan so that everybody has a good understanding and a good grasp of what it takes for high quality Tier 1 instruction. That's really where it starts. And then to have the Tier 2 and 3 level interventions. But also, if we do have to target specific kids, and we do have interventions, but are they the ones exactly that child needs? That is the next question.
My second question would be, what can we as a board do to help in this area? I mean, what support would be most helpful coming from us to kind of address that? Because it has been something for the last 3 years that I have seen in the reports, the gap existing. I'm not really seeing it closing.
It is not closing, or definitely not at a rate that we would want. I do feel like the board has always been supportive when it comes to either programs that we would wish to purchase or through professional development, but I don't think a program necessarily is the answer, because really we know what happens with the classroom with that teacher is what makes the greatest impact. So I feel like just the encouragement and support to continue to develop our teachers and their skill sets, and the keep trying, you know.
And if I could speak to that too, Josh, here's what I've learned. We have a really good school system. We have a lot of really good instruction going on across our district, but we're not real intentional with some of our programs and some of the instruction with interventions in our schools for kids who are behind. So when we're talking about systemic process now, we're talking about becoming very intentional about making sure every kid has access to high quality Tier 1 instruction, and then that the interventions that are in place are being measured and monitored frequently to see, as a matter of fact, we've got some doing it weekly, to see if what we're changing is moving kids, and if it's not, we look at it and change again. So versus coming to you each year and saying, from this point going forward, when we sit here next year, as superintendent, I would like to be able to say, here's the things we've done with intentionality, and here's the results it yielded. So we're not going to wait till next year to answer that. We're going to be doing it each week, each time as we go throughout the year. And we'll bring you that data throughout the year rather than you sitting here next year saying, okay, we still haven't closed gaps in math.
Do teachers have time to get together and discuss these students?
Yeah. So one of the things she's going to share a little bit later with our plan of excellence that we put in place is we're asking teachers now, especially at certain schools and certain levels, based on where you are, to spend more time talking together and collaborating on specific students, specific strategies, and specific standards to make sure, once again, we're being intentional with moving individual kids versus us giving content. Our schools are actually naming kids. Henry Webb is here, we want to move him to here, and here's how we're going to do it.
also a behavior problem.
He is. He is. It's hard to handle.
That's easy talk.
Anything else?
Thank you.
No? Okay. So we'll go on to growth. In the current system and in the future, high schools do not have a growth measure. They don't have one test that leads to the other that they feel like is a good measure for growth. So we'll be speaking of elementary and middle schools. And you can see basically for reading and math, for the student growth percentiles and categorical growth, we are above the state. But we also know that we can't take our eyes off of growth, because that is part of the Tier 1 instruction. And it's also part of Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction. Not only do we want to close the gap, but we want to take the students where they are, no matter where they are. If they're at the very top or they're at the very bottom, we know we need to get them to grow in their knowledge and skill set. And again, to do that, we do have to focus on all students and monitor their progress so that we know how they are progressing throughout. And to do that, again, we need to focus on our Tier 1 instruction and then provide targeted interventions for the 2 and 3 level.
I know you said that they're not going to be measuring high school growth, but I feel it's important to know how our high school students are growing when there's really no test. How do we plan to do that?
Well, we're currently doing that already, and the data that we use for that is not just in the classroom with the teacher-driven assessments that is based on their curriculum and their tests. We're using CERT data, and we just, in 2 of the high schools, just finished round 2, and the rest of them will be finished before Christmas break. And so they'll be able to see growth between the first test and the second test, and then even from the third test. And that is where they will be able to target their interventions, because they'll be able to see who needs the most help and who doesn't based on their growth, whether they're at benchmark or not. But the good thing about CERT is we have last year's CERT data as well. So not only can we see 2 data pieces, but we have 3 for every student from last year as well. So by Christmas break, we'll have 5 data points for each student, so we'll be able to see their progress.
And all of our high schools are using it.
All of the high schools are using it, yes.
And we're also looking at maybe bringing you all a recommendation that we give every student at the senior year, the ACT2 here in Kenton County. And then we would have a formal way of measuring growth from the junior level ACT to senior level ACT. We think it would help our kids, and many of our kids would like that if we help pay for it and have that test for them.
And the colleges accept that ACT.
Yes.
Do other districts do that?
Some,
Does the big ones bid?
no, no.
Not many.
Not many.
But once
many.
again, since there's no
Did
growth.
you do that for it?
No. Since there's no growth measure though, and kids, our ultimate goal is to get kids college and or career ready. So if we can get more students taking that ACT and focus on that growth from the junior ACT to the senior ACT even more while we're doing during the interim with CERT, we think we can even get more kids college ready.
And another reason we want to do that is because in the future, Coyote, which is the math and English test for students who had not met benchmark to be able to take college classes without remedial classes that count for credit. Currently in the new system, we won't have that available. So we do know that we need some other measure for kids to show that they're college ready that is meaningful, because the colleges won't take CERT. So we do need something for them after we're required by law to remediate them. So after we've done that, we do need something formal to show that they have met benchmark. So we have a proposal into KDE to allow us to have our own test day for seniors. We'll see if that happens. Did that answer your question?
Good.
Okay.
Overview. Thank you.
Yeah.
That sets
Going
us
back
back, I
to-
think that helps us see the big picture.
Good.
Go back to a quick question on gap, we'll save me time for later, is the stuff that we as a district have approved purchasing, such as the map and other things, are all the schools using those programs?
All of the elementary
I mean, elementary, middle.
Elementary and middle use MAP, yes. And then the high schools use CERT.
but not just have access to it, they are all using it.
We all give it. And then, I think I understand where you're going with this. Just giving it is not enough. So really what you're asking, I believe, is what are they doing with that information? And so, again, we have schools that own the data, own the students, and have developed a plan and monitor the plan. And then we have some that are in the infancy stages of that, of giving it and the now what, and they might do a blanket to all type intervention, but not target it to that specific child and that specific need. So that is our focus for this year.
And that was
Is-
exactly where I was going to.
Okay. Okay, transition ready. This is the new terminology in the new system. It previously was called college and career ready, and now it's a new term, transition ready. And just a point of information now, it's not just a high school piece. In the new model, elementary and middle schools do have a form of being transition ready. Most of theirs will be through tests, or proficiency tests, but for the high schools and now college and career ready, this is what we have. We're very proud that we've been able to increase our number of students that have met benchmark, and our ACT composite continues to grow. We are above the state in all of the categories, English, math, reading, and science. The percents that have met benchmark, again, are above the state in all of the categories. Our AP classes continue to thrive. For students earning college credits through AP, the number of students scoring a 3, 4, or 5 is significantly above the state. And then for end of course exams, for proficient and distinguished, we are above the state in all of those levels. I think we talked about that as well, but here's what's interesting about the end of course exams. They are being rewritten, and so we will not have a comparison for a few years. We'll have to set a new baseline for the new tests that come along for the end of course exams. Now for the growth area. So we have a lot to be proud of, but we also have several areas that we need to grow. For the college and career readiness, our number of points dropped from 66.6 to 63.2. And then the college and career readiness for the district is below the state. You might ask yourself, or you probably already have, well, how can our ACT composite be so high and we have so many students meeting benchmark, but we're not even at the state level for college and career ready? It's the career piece. If you see number 3, only 14% of our high school seniors are considered career ready. So the number of industry certifications or COSA tests that our students passed or even took was significantly lower than the state. So
Do our students pay for those tests?
they do not.
So that's
They do not.
much.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's not part of the problem. So we know that we have a significant amount of work in the area of career ready. The qualifications, for lack of a better term, for how you become career ready in the new accountability model is a little bit different than what it is now. I feel like our opportunities are greater to be considered career ready in the future, but we know we need to get more students through the career pathways, but not only do we need them to complete the pathways, that's step number 1, get them to complete them, but then pass the COSA or industry certifications. In the past, they also had to take and meet benchmark on some kind of academic test, like the ASVAB, but they don't have to do that in the future. But we still know that this is an area of concentration that our kids need and deserve, and that is what we're going to focus on, as well as the college ready.
Let me ask this, and I might not phrase it this right, but on this COSA test, do we just not have a lot of kids taking it, or do we have lots of kids taking it and not passing it?
Both.
Okay.
We don't have enough students taking it. The reason they're not taking it is because they're not finishing the pathways. They might take 1 or 2 classes, but not the third, or they may switch around. And then the number of students that actually do pass it is not great. It needs to improve as well. So,
Structure here.
yes, we know we need to make sure we're teaching the standards that are going to be assessed before they ever take the COSA test.
And the one thing I would add to that is making sure that the pathways we have lead to meaningful employment, working with business and industry in our region and jobs across the state. So we're not just worried about getting the career points, and I know we talked about this the other day, but we're worried about making sure kids who go into career fields that can lead to meaningful employment are those that lead to successful careers. So we're really worried, I know the academies do that, a great job of that, we've been doing that, but with all of our high schools, those pathways are meaningful. Not just about getting those points, it's about having those meaningful pathways that kids actually leave with a certification that puts them a step ahead or in the right direction.
Since we don't have a separate presentation from the academies, it's the same kind of data that we get from the schools, I know how that gets distributed out.
We're actually going to this year.
Oh, we're going to,
Mhm.
Yes.
oh, okay, never
Yeah.
mind then. I was just gonna ask, is there, does that seem to be a successful model, is what I was gonna ask, as far as passing this COSA test and
The stage is set for them to pass, but we definitely need to, like I said, focus more on the standards and make sure the kids are ready before they ever take it. Okay, so the next part is the graduation rate, and the elementary and middle schools do not have accountability as far as the graduation rate go. Now, we know, and they know as well, and they take it very much to heart, that what happens in the elementary and middle schools as far as reading goes directly impacts the graduation rate later. So it's not that they don't buy into it, they definitely do. But for the 4-year graduation rate, we do have quite a few successes in that area. We are above the state for the 4-year cohort graduation rate. As far as the district, African American students, if you look at some of our demographic groups, are significantly above the state for their graduation rate, and Hispanics as well. So we're really proud of that. However, if you look at the growth area, our 4-year graduation rate decreased just a little bit, and our students with disabilities are below the state in their graduation rate. So just to give you a quick breakdown of what happened within the 3 high schools, some in Kenton dipped a little bit, Scott went up some, and Dixie went down some, and you put all the ups and downs together, and we took a little dip for that. The high schools do have a more consistent, if not to say better way to track their kids. We are monitoring them, and they are giving a quarterly report of how many kids are still in that 4-year graduation cohort and ready to graduate on time. Also, in the future, the graduation rate is supposed to be calculated, and again, none of this, it's all still in draft. We don't know if it will be passed in its entirety or not, but it will be the 4- and 5-year combined graduation rate, and we'll see if that helps us. We do have some students who it does take 5 years to complete their program, and while we would like them to get out in 4 years, it's more important that they graduate, not necessarily graduate on time. So we do have some schools where students may finish mid-year of their 5th year, but again, we want them to get their diploma versus just saying 4 years and you're out. So we do have some in the 5-year cohort. So again, everything we do in the classroom is going to impact the graduation rate. So the more we have a high-quality Tier 1 instruction where students are engaged in learning, and we do have individualized opportunities for them through the career pathways or some other traditional setting, the more likely they are to graduate on time. We are looking for more industry certifications, again, that lead to meaningful employment that will be of high interest to the students as well. Opportunity and access, I'm probably way over time, but okay. Opportunity and access is a totally new category. Most of what is in opportunity and access would not surprise you because it has been reported before. If you look on the school report card, there's discipline data, there's attendance data, there's teacher turnover data, there's all kinds of data that is reported. In the new system, that we will actually be accountable for a significant portion in the opportunity and access categories. Some of those are making sure all students have access to a rich curriculum. There's whole child supports, making sure students have access to counselors and other supports throughout the school day, like FRC coordinators. Behavior data and attendance data and seclusion and restraint data will be not just reported but be part of our accountability this year. So this is a new process for us to track a lot of the things in opportunity and access. We have known it before, but really monitoring it and trying to make sure that we have everything where it needs to be in order to earn points. And again, if we're earning points, that means we are doing what's best for kids. So again, it's not just about the points, but some of our strengths that we see currently that we have in our schools is we have a mental health therapists available from outside agencies that can help our students. Our district-wide attendance is 17th highest in the state, and we are working on positive behavior intervention supports. Some schools have more fidelity than others, but we're working on that district-wide as well. We know we need to decrease our chronic absenteeism. That's another thing that is going to be tracked in the new system. And some things we're working on to address these is developing an attendance plan for each school. And then the behavior consultant is working closely with the school so that we can provide assistance to those students and schools who have high behavior needs to make sure that the kids are learning as they can and have their behavior supports that they need. So with that, our celebrations, we have a lot to celebrate. I only put 6 things on there, but we could go on all day. But just, we were able to increase the number of distinguished schools that we have this year. We're very, very proud of that. So we have, we're a distinguished district, and we have 11 distinguished schools and 5 proficient. Dixie was 8th in the state for their scores on their AP exams. Hinsdale was 2nd for attendance. Our ACT composite, the highest in history. We're above the state average in virtually everything, but number 6 is the best part. We have great students and we have a great staff, and then we have a great team, Team Kitten. So we're really proud of our progress, but now we have some work to do as well. Any questions?
Thank you.
Dr. Webb?
Sorry, I
Well, yeah, we have to do the plan of excellence next, but anyway.
Grade 6 reading levels, what were our scores in grade 5 reading levels? I mean, if we're saying, let me get back to the page.
I actually have those, if you'll give me a second. I don't have that one memorized, but I have it.
Grade 6 reading for all middle schools, 241 out of 391. So what was our grade 5?
Give me just a
Seeing
second.
like a large change, or is it?
It's not as drastic as that. Hold on, I will find it.
Well, I haven't looked at it in a while,
Just
but
a
I would say
second.
that our 5th grade reading scores was not something I recall being an issue. So we're not gonna be in the bottom 35-40% of the state. So 6th grade,
What happens
yeah.
from 5th to 6th?
yeah, so 5th to 6th, we don't teach reading class in 6th grade, statewide. I mean, typically, you learn to read, then you read to learn. But some districts do a little more with reading and, in 6th grade, and some don't do as much. So we're gonna determine, once again, all these areas, we're putting laser-like focus on. What it is we're doing that's working there, what we're doing that's not working, and then we're gonna address it. So that 6th grade language mechanics is an issue across our district as well, and as well as reading. So, and we think it's a curriculum issue. I think it's a curriculum issue.
There's one thing, if you're doing well in 5th grade,
Yeah.
maybe not.
Yeah.
Well, there's a similar thing to Jessica's point, and I notice this every year when the data comes out for all districts, and I spend a little time looking at it, is math, it seems from 5th grade seems to be really high, and you get middle school and it just like drops down
Yeah.
significantly. I mean, is that just they're testing something totally different, but there's not much of it, something's happening, there's a transition
Yeah.
issue.
Well, the standards increase in difficulty, but here's a little bit of the data for reading in grade 5. One of our schools was 21st in the state. So, and then another one was 36th, and then 75, and then 107 out of 692. So we do have, the 5th grade reading is pretty high, yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
the other thing, how we transition kids from 5th to 6th.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things we can look at there. But the curriculum does get a lot more, Josh, in depth when you get into middle school. In math and reading, we go a little deeper.
Yeah, it increases in difficulty. So we've mentioned several times the plan of excellence, so I'll give you a short synopsis of what this is. What it is a breakdown of schools into different tiers. We have a tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, and it is, you can see by the pyramid. And what we're doing with each of those tiers, beginning with tier 3, is providing more supports for them. We are also asking them to spend more time with their teachers in PLCs, and we're asking them to do more professional development, more tracking and monitoring of students, so that we can make sure that we are all progressing. And so teachers are keeping a data notebook, and in that they would have their curriculum, they would have their lesson plans that should show differentiation and intervention strategies, student work samples. They would have their student data tracking, and this is where we can readily see, when we say track, we just don't want, we're not just looking for the numbers, we're looking for what are you doing with that student, and then has what you've done with them worked or not. And they could have some other assessments in there as well, not just the map or CERT data. The school leadership also has a growth notebook where they are looking at the entire school, clearly with doing all these things, but they would have to have their professional growth plans, their professional learning community schedule. They should also be tracking the data and analyzing it and seeing where kids need help and in what subject, and then having a plan for them as well. They would have their attendance data. They should know who's in the gap and who isn't. And part of the PLC process is making sure that everybody has a deep understanding of what the students need and share, because a lot of times I may know something that another teacher might, or another teacher might have a strategy that I need to know, and so there's a lot of benefit in coming together and discussing. So as part of the process, we are doing school accreditation visits, and we have had 2 so far. And this is where a team of administrators and consultants at the district level, the school level, go to the school, and we visit every classroom. And then we spend some time looking at the teachers' data notebooks, and then we spend some time looking at the school leadership growth notebooks, and then we look at school safety, attendance, all those whole child supports as well, just like the accountability model. And then we give a report back to the school principal that they can share. And in that, each teacher would not get individual feedback, it's by department. But so let's say if I'm a member of the English department, I would get feedback as a group as to how the classroom visits went. So we would get some strengths and suggestions. And then same thing for the notebooks in general, some strengths and suggestions by content area. And then the principals get the overarching, here's how everything is going, some strengths and some suggestions as far as the entire accountability models go. And we've only done 2. We have another one coming up next week, and I think most of us feel like we're learning just as much from the process as the school that we're visiting does.
I want to take this time to thank you all for your continued support, and I know I can only imagine on your end how long these meetings are, but really the fact that you all have taken time to hear, where we are and where we're headed, I think is a reflection of your all's genuine dedication to our students' success. and that's why we're all here. So really appreciate that. So we're going to be looking at a lot of data, and as a former AP math teacher, in particular AP stats, I love me some data. But also know that kind of looking at all of it, you know, I like to think of kind of what story is this data telling us. And so just to give you a little bit of a preview of the story that Taylor Mill's data hopefully will tell you, kind of honestly reflects what Martha was talking about with the district. At Taylor Mill, we like to say that we're on a path to greatness. And along that path, I think where we are right now, we're looking back at how far we've come, and we've got lots and lots of things to celebrate. And those accomplishments we're really proud of. But we're not complacent in where we are, and we're very real about what lies ahead and what we're going to achieve in the future. So that's kind of the preview of the story. The next, and I'm going to kind of talk about the next 3 slides together. But these, like the proficiency, the gap, and the growth, you know, those are all data points that we're used to talking about. And there's a lot of commonalities that are there, and even not only just in the strengths and the growth areas, but also in our strategies to address the growth areas. We're really proud that in all 3 areas we had overall improvement. I think that is something that is worth noting for sure. And then specifically, we have things listed under proficiency, gap, and growth. You know, we had an increase in reading, both student growth percentile and categorical growth. We are ahead of the state average in all content areas as far as reading novice, which we decreased. And so a lot of kind of things to celebrate in there, but then also looking at being real about where we have to head. You know, making sure that we're decreasing our number of math in novice, because we did not do that last year. As far as our novice reduction, we met 50% of our novice reduction goal, which is great. But on the other end, we only met 50% of our novice reduction goal. So kind of looking at our 2 large sub-gap group populations as far as the free and reduced population and the students with disabilities, and making sure that we're putting appropriate and intentional supports in place for them. And so when I think about the strategies to address those growth areas, there are some definite commonalities there. For one, again, thinking about what Martha was saying as a district, you know, last year we had interventions in place, but they weren't systematic, and they weren't always intentional, and we didn't have maybe a school-wide structure to name and claim all kids and make sure that we're weekly tracking their data so that we can intervene on a timely basis. And so we've implemented what we're calling win time, which is what I need, and it is intentional time carved out of our school day for reading and for math, where students are literally getting what they need. So if students are above grade level, they're getting enrichment that might be passion projects or genius hour. If they are below grade level, then they're getting research-based intentional interventions. We have a data dashboard just for Taylor Mill, where we are tracking that longitudinal data, but also that weekly progress monitoring, so that we can know, okay, is this intervention working? Because if it's not, we need to look at changing interventions. And so it's really helped us, that win time, kind of that bird's eye view of the systematic way of tracking the data, but also the systematic way of using our resources. I think has been already, we're seeing some benefits from that. Because it helps us use our time more effectively, but then also helps us push in supports as far as personnel. It helps us use our Title I staff more effectively with special ed. It helps us make sure that the resource time our special ed students are getting, that is in addition to the core block. It's not in place of, they're not getting pulled out of resource. And it also helps us be more intentional with our collaborative time with special ed. And I would add also that one of our instructional priorities is, you'll see we have several research-based instructional priorities in addition to the quality indicators, but one of those is high expectations. And so that win time has really helped us make sure that all students are getting access to the same grade level content. That core block, they're getting the same standards, but then they have the students who need it, they have that additional time so that they've got the support that they need to be successful with that grade level content. And then I think lastly, I would wrap that up with the fact that we really put a focus on positive relationships, because we know that all students, but in particular those students that need it the most in our GAP population, if we're going to expect them to exceed our expectations, we've got to have those high quality positive relationships, and they have to know that we believe in them, and so that's a priority for us as well.
Can we talk about GAP for a second on that GAP slide that you have?
Sure.
Looking at just writing, that's a 70% decrease. I mean, that would be like, wow, the whole classroom got blown up or something. I mean,
Which is interesting because we increased our writing score overall, but there were some particular things with GAP. I would say that the win time, I'm very confident will help address that, because I think with the students who got interventions, ELA interventions last year, it was not in addition to their core. So they were being pulled, and a lot of times that was probably during writing instruction. So they're not missing that this year. So I really feel confident that that's something we're doing differently this year, that we'll see a bump in that to support our GAP students.
yeah, because when there's that many, you kind of have to try to identify what that reason was.
Yes.
Because something must have been working okay for a while, and then there was this drop off. It was like, what happened differently?
Yeah.
But there should be some reason.
I really do think last year the ELA interventions our students were getting, they were being pulled from ELA, and it was during the writing instruction, so I'm confident that that's going to help address that.
Thank you.
Yes. So moving on to some newer data that we're not necessarily used to looking at in this way, but the transition ready. As far as fifth grade, a lot of the things that we're putting in place are making sure that it's school-wide, intentional, and systematic. We're confident that that's going to increase our fifth grade scores as well. The only thing that I think is different here that I would point out, we did have a decrease in our writing distinguished scores. So I want to make sure that we're focusing on pushing our high-end writers. And then also we had a decrease in social studies. So we're being very intentional about connecting those social studies standards with our reading program, because anytime you can help students make connections, then you're only going to help them build understanding and achievement. And with opportunity and access, we've got a lot of exciting things going on here, because when you look at the social emotional needs, chronic absenteeism, behavior, academic needs, and addressing the whole child, we've put into place a student support team structure that again is systematic, intentional, it's school-wide, it is based on data, real-time data, and it's very action-oriented. We get together and have everybody at the table, whether it be our RBTL district person, our family resource coordinator, counselor, Kim, our assistant principal, kind of everybody who can help support those students' needs, whatever it may be. They're at the table, and we have a very systematic way of tracking that. So we're really, really excited about that. And then also looking on the programming side, one thing that we started last year was a K-2 Mandarin Chinese instruction. And we saw a lot of great benefits from that, and just that early foreign language acquisition and what it does for native literacy skills. We wanted to, as a school, expand that to K-5, so we currently have that in place, which is something that we're really proud of. And so lastly, our celebrations, you can see our shared vision here listed. We're really excited about our culture. Any member of our community will tell you that we've got just a really energetic, positive culture that's behind this shared vision. We have a lot of power and ownership over this statement. And when we committed to this shared vision that we all helped create, we also committed to being a shared community of learners. And that was evident this summer. We had 12 different book studies going on that were all teacher choice, teacher driven, teacher led. In some instances, there were nationally known authors that were involved in them. And to see that filter out to the larger community, because in January we'll have 4 family book studies. That's kind of a cooperation between our PTA, Title I, and our family resource coordinator. So that's really exciting to kind of see our community get behind our vision and our commitment. And we also went through the branding process, so we're really proud of our new logo. You might even see it on cars if you're driving around town. So that's just kind of that whole thing, I think, is something for us to celebrate. And the TEL survey shows that we had drastic improvements in almost every single area as reflected by that data. We are excited that we're in the first group nationwide to be a certified Energy Best school, which is all about building positive leaders, both in our staff and our students, and helping them build those leadership and life skills and address that whole child. And when I think about our culture of greatness, I think about, that every staff member on their name tag, it has that they are a leader, no matter what their position is. And they've really embraced that culture of greatness that comes along with that. We have 12 Google certified educators, one of which is a classified staff, actually. We have a monthly Twitter chat going on, and we were talking about goal setting. It's the last Thursday of every month at 8 o'clock if you'd like to join. But the next topic is goal setting, actually, and what that means for us and for our students. But our first one had 41 participants, really neat kind of thing going on there. So, it's very empowering, inspiring. We have this kind of shared leadership model. And so when I sit here and talk about number 4, I know I'm speaking on behalf of Taylor Mill, but really it's that whole community of leaders, our staff, our students, and our family that helped us be classified as a distinguished school for the first time. So as I like to say at Taylor Mill, we like to say we're on our path to greatness. It's our path, it's our greatness, and let's go.
Thank you.
Yes.
The win time, for my own Taylor Mill genius. How are we tracking? Is it tracking if it's working based on MAP scores, or how are we tracking if that's being effective?
Yes, that's a good question. So for Tier 1 students, which are students who are showing based on MAP data and what we're seeing in the classrooms, they are showing that they're either on grade level or above. We're only benchmarking them according to MAP. So that longitudinal data has, I say only MAP, but we also have K-Prep data listed on there also. So we're kind of looking at that longitudinal piece to see, okay, yes, we're confident this student is scoring at or above grade level, and so we're only going to be benchmarking them. But if a student is showing that they're below grade level on those benchmarks, then Tier 2 and 3, they get progress monitored weekly, depending on that intentional intervention that they're getting.
How long will kids stay in Tier 2 before it makes a determination they go to Tier 1, or they're down to Tier 3?
So like RTI best practice says it should be every 4 to 6 weeks that you kind of look at that data trend to see if an intervention's working. Right now, because this is the first time we're doing this, we have a behavior RTI and an academic RTI meeting every month. So that means every other month we're looking at academics. So for us right now, it's every 8 weeks. We're sitting down and looking at, okay, is the data showing that this intervention's working? And if not, what do we need to change? Do they need to go to Tier 3? Are they progressing enough that we can move them into Tier 1? So we're making those decisions this year every 8 weeks.
Is this your 3rd year or 4th year, Alex?
Second.
Second?
Yes. Oh, I remember this time last year was my first time. Second year is just as scary.
Well, and I'll hear first time last year, I remember being, I really loved, I think, and I don't have it written down, I tried to look it up from last year, the question that you asked your staff when you came in, what do you love about Taylor Mill, what do you wish for Taylor Mill? So I kind of wanted to take that today, so the other schools will have time to prepare, and unfortunately at first they don't have time to prepare, but what are you most proud of Taylor Mill this past year? And I'm sorry, you're over the first thing.
Wow, I mean, I just think that that page summarizes sort of everything that encompasses what we've celebrated as a group. And when I say that vision statement it's not just a pretty poster that hangs on our wall. It literally is something that we are working to live out every single day, and to see the daily commitment by our staff, and to hear our students and their language and actions start to reflect that is pretty awesome. I mean, just even you calling James a Taylor Mill genius, that's something I'm proud of, because yes, I think every student at Taylor Mill, you can hear them say that they have genius and that they are a genius, and so to hear that belief in themselves is pretty powerful and amazing.
So then what do you hope or wish for Taylor Mill for next year?
I think that
Looking at this time next year, what do you?
well, so to me, of course, I want to keep our distinguished classification if we're just talking about test scores. But I think one of the conversations we have a lot as a whole staff, and honestly even with our students, we're transparent with them too, is that if we're committed to this path to greatness, let's be real, it's not going to be easy. And so there are going to be obstacles, there are going to be challenges, there's going to be times that we all feel like throwing our hands up and giving up. But we're going to support one another and persevere to make sure that every time in that kind of last statement in our vision statement that we're exceeding expectations, and that we look at this time next year, because I know just reflecting from last year to right now, I could never have predicted that we would be seeing these things that have occurred in 1 year. And so I hope this time next year that we're all kind of looking around in amazement going, wow, I didn't ever think we could have accomplished that.
Good afternoon. We are happy to be here today to present the progress of Kenton Elementary over the course of the past year. We come to you today proud to represent a school of distinction with an overall state score within the accountability model of 77.4. We've worked very hard and continue to make daily improvements to get better and better with student achievement, which is our focus. So we're going to begin with proficiency. Our proficiency scores continue to increase each year. Highlights would be our 5th grade writing and 5th grade reading scores. We do recognize that we had some struggles last year with our 4th grade reading novice percentages and 3rd grade math apprentice, but we are well aware of that and targeting that. We also did not meet the delivery targets set by the state for proficient and distinguished scores in the area of combined reading and math. We were about 6 points away from that delivery target. So to help make improvements in the area of proficiency, we continue to track student performance, especially our novice students. We've been doing this for several years now because of the emphasis on novice reduction. For the area of math, we continue to work with SET. That's show, explain, tell. That is what we teach the students to do to answer constructed response questions. And we realize that we have more work to do with that professionally as far as vertical alignment with our staff in terms of learning from each other and then holding our students accountable to very high expectations, very high levels. And I often reiterate to the teachers that I want all students held to the same levels, the same high expectations. So starting this year, we have calculated the number of students each teacher needs to move according to MAP so that we can meet the K-Prep delivery target of 75% combined math and reading proficient distinguished. So I've given each grade level team a goal, a percentage based on MAP, where I want them to be at by the end of the year, and then each individual teacher, I have provided them a raw number of students that I want moved by the end of the year into proficient and distinguished. So everybody knows how many students we need to move, we need to target to get to that delivery target of 75%. We are also embracing whole brain learning as we continue to strive to bring forth higher levels of student engagement. School-wide, we're now using the Larry Bell chant of the 12 powerful words each day, and this will help students be better prepared and better able to tackle those constructed response questions. In the area of GAP, we have made significant progress, but we do still struggle. Over the course of the last 2 years, though, we are proud to tell you that our GAP scores have increased by 20 points within the accountability model. And this happened due to the emphasis being placed on novice reduction. Again, I gave grade level teams a goal and said 10 or less novice per team. 3rd, 4th, and 5th have met that goal consistently over the past 2 years. We're now moving towards a no novice goal. However, we continue to not meet gaps or delivery targets for GAP with the exception of writing. Now, writing, all students and GAP students have well exceeded the delivery target. To help meet delivery targets, changes we have made are being much more intentional with the focus on not just novice reduction, but on GAP students and looking at particular GAP students within the novice and apprentice ranges and creating our watch list, which we've always done, but creating those watch lists around those students. We're collecting progress monitoring data on those students, collecting that from the teachers weekly. That is in graph format and generated based on progress monitoring. We have a weekly RTI administration team meeting. We make suggestions for moves for those students in and out of Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 services, and that takes place immediately. We do this for the areas of reading, math, discipline, and attendance. At the classroom level, teachers are providing those GAP students with weekly targeted remediation, and this is based on their Friday assessment outcomes. So students at the novice and apprentice levels are working with teachers in small group remediation on the wrong answer item analysis. And so they have to work to master that item. So that item that you got wrong, it just doesn't go away. It comes back to haunt you. And you have to redo that until you prove mastery of that standard. We're very proud to have the highest scores in the elementary for the district in growth. Our fifth graders did an outstanding job in reading growth. Our fourth graders did an outstanding job in math growth. However, as an overall school data indicates, we did not have as many students, as according to the prior year in comparison, meet the growth percentile rating of being at the 40th percentile or higher in the area of math. We do utilize ST Math for all students, grades K to 2, and then for those in grades 3, 4, and 5 not showing growth. And of course, we track our MAP scores with growth. And we as well have set up data notebooks for our teachers to be able to track a lot of different data, not just growth, within those data notebooks, and they are electronic. As we think about fifth grade transition and being ready and moving them into middle school, it's our goal to have all students at or above grade level. Fifth graders' scores were very good overall last year, especially in the area of reading and writing. However, we do recognize with those fourth graders who moved up that we need to focus on novice reduction in the area of reading, especially for those GAP students and with social studies. So to help students in those areas, we use ACE. We use SET for math constructed response. We use ACE for reading, social studies, science constructed response. And basically we ask the students to answer the question by restating, with part of the question as the answer, cite evidence from the text, and extend their thinking. And with extend their thinking, this year we're moving to a more targeted process where in reading we want them to either make a text-to-self connection or we want them to use author's purpose. So school-wide we're embracing PI. So with every reading passage we're being very intentional with identifying the author's purpose to persuade, inform, or entertain. And again, we're working towards professional development, especially vertical alignment. That is much needed within our building, so we're working towards that, especially with our use of ACE and SET. And then we continue with goal setting. We've been doing that for the past 6 years. We feel like monitoring and self-tracking is proving to be very beneficial for our students. So at this time, Mrs. Coleman is going to talk about attendance and PBIS.
I'm pleased to share with you two areas for Kenton Elementary in the area of opportunity and access. First, our attendance rate for the 16-17 school year was 96.5%, which is over our target rate of 94%. We celebrated attendance each month with the Golden Pall for the grade level that had the highest attendance rate. Now our focus turns to chronic absenteeism. In the 16-17 school year, our chronic absentee percentage was 5.2%. We've developed several incentives to aid with this attendance. For example, if school-wide for certain weeks of the school year, the school-wide attendance is over 98%. We do have people coming to visit the students in our cafeteria. Also, even though our percentage of students that did get discipline referrals in the 16-17 school year was 36.59%, we can announce that Kenton Elementary has reached fidelity for Tier 1 and PBIS, so we're very proud of the hard work, which allows us to move to focus on Tier 2 with small groups of students. And for individual students, we have several programs started already, such as Rti, Calm Classroom, Check-in, Check-out, and also our school counselor and our FRC works with small groups of students to help with individual needs. And we're hoping that all of this does help to reduce the number of students receiving office referrals.
Okay, so the most notable and important things that I want you to be aware of for Kenton Elementary. Top 15% of all state elementary schools proficiency. Top 5% all state elementary schools writing. Top 5% of all state elementary schools fifth grade proficient distinguished reading scores. Top 10% of all state elementary schools for growth. So to celebrate, We did hold a distinguished dinner earlier this month. All students scoring at least one distinguished score in a tested area could bring 2 guests to a Texas Roadhouse dinner. All students with a distinguished score in at least each category had their picture taken, and those are displayed by category, by subject area, in our hallway of distinction that we created. On the days that the scores are made public, we have a fun celebration day for the students. One year we dressed as superheroes. This year we were so bright that we wore sunglasses and bright colors. Later in the year, students will receive medals for either being all distinguished, all proficient distinguished, or at least one proficient distinguished rating and growth medals. So as you can see, we are very focused on student achievement. It is about all kids. Our theme this year is on top of the world. Last year we were champions and we definitely pulled that off. So now we're on top of the world with our champions and we hope to stay that way. So thank you for taking the time to learn about Kenton Elementary. We're very proud of our students. Very proud of our teachers. The teachers amaze us every single day with new and creative ideas in bringing forth student achievement. Their conversations at PLC meetings are very rich, very targeted about meeting individual student needs. I hope that you will visit our school. We love to show off our students and their high quality work that is taking place. And thank you as a board for your continued support in our quest to remain a school of distinction and to move forward into the 5-star category rating. Do you have questions for us?
What would be your biggest goal for the upcoming year?
Well, my personal biggest goal is that we become top 10 in the state. That's my personal goal. And I know that's lofty and ambitious, and people look at me when I say that, and they just kind of shake their head. But the kids are tremendous at Kenton Elementary. They're wonderful, and I have every bit of confidence in the students that they can do this. Might not happen next year, but we're just going to keep getting better. We've been getting better each year, and we are going to continue to do that.
What's your enrollment now?
Our enrollment is around 600 without preschool, 630 with preschool.
What is the Larry Bell chant?
I knew you were going to ask that.
I was like, ready. What is this? You could do it for us.
Oh, yeah. Gee, thank you.
Made me do it.
Yeah. These are the 12 words. Let's say them together. If we're going to meet our goal, we have to get it right. Then you say it again. Trace means to outline, analyze to break it down, infer, read between the lines, evaluate to judge. And then these are the 12 words. And then Mrs. Coleman.
Yeah, and then I had to get on the news today. We're taking turns with the stanzas
Yeah.
and teach the next. So the next stanza
Yeah.
is formulate, build, create, explain, tell me all about it, summarize, back it up, explain, tell me why. And so it goes on.
Yeah.
It just helps them with their extended response questions.
Yes. Then there's another little stanza.
Subject to
Yes, good, good. That's great. Yeah, so every day. So hopefully they'll see those key words, and that's going to help them tackle those constructed response questions. Oh, if I see analyze, break it down. I'm going to go into the text. I'm going to break this down and pull out the important parts to make my answer. So we're really into whole brain learning. Our teachers are doing a lot with that. Vocabulary with songs, chants, motions. If you think about it, if you know a song from 30 years ago, it comes back, you could sing it, no problem. And so that's what we're trying to hopefully create a culture where, they've got all these little phrases in their minds and it'll come back to them and help them with their student achievement.
It's really important for those young ones too.
Yes, and especially for the GAP students too. I feel like this may be tapping into another avenue for those GAP students to help them learn, because the ways we think may not always reach them. So hopefully this is another approach that will reach them.
And Larry Bell basically spent a lot of time monitoring instructional strategies and what it is, those 12 power verbs that kids have to know to be able to be successful. And this really makes sure that the kids keeps it in their minds.
They always remember it.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
They'll remember that.
Sure.
They're already doing it.
Exactly when they're in Josh asked, what do you hope when you said top 10? So what makes you most proud of Kenton Elementary the past year?
Our
Other than
student,
being the school distinction.
yeah. Our students are phenomenal. Please come out and see them. They are so wonderful, and they're so cute, and they're so kind, and just generous, and they're just very lovable, and they come every day happy to learn. They want to be there. They're just really excited, and I just love being with them every day and taking care of them and trying to make sure that they have a future. That's my main reason for being in this profession, is I want kids to have a future. They've got to have an opportunity to make something of themselves and make something of their lives.
And that climate that you've created is conducive for that learning.
Yeah, we're very focused, very, very focused. All right, thank you.
Well, good afternoon, board members. Probably say a few things that's already been said, but we too at Beech Grove want to thank you for your support, your guidance throughout this year and my first year last year. I'm Mike Jacks, by the way. I'm principal at Beech Grove. And this is Heather Ray, the assistant principal at Beech Grove. We're brewing strong and brewing proud. That's our tagline and something we've been working on all year. We're creating a culture where kids that come into our building are proud to be there, want to be there, and go out into the community and show all that they've learned in the way they treat people and the way that they are involved in the community. They're proud, and that's our whole goal. I also just want to say that it's nice in year 2 to be sitting here and to be able to say that Beech Grove again is a distinguished school. And that's kind of a worry of mine coming in year 1 thinking, oh, I could be a distinguished school. But I want to say that comes with great support from all of my staff, from the consultants, from the district level, all the way down to our parents and our students. And we're proud to be part of Team Kenton. And we're excited about achieving that world-class status that Dr. Webb talks about. So let's take a look at Beech Grove's proficiency. Some of our strengths, if you take a look at our reading students and our writing, we're very proud. IEP students in reading, if you look, we really increased from 35% to almost 60% this year, as well as our writing students in the Proficient and Distinguished, also a great increase. And we reduced our novice in our math grade 5 students down to 2%. We are aware of some growth areas. We're going to be working on our math. It's a big focus for Beech Grove this year and in the future. Our 3rd grade math students decreased in proficiency. Our 4th grade math students, fewer in Proficient and Distinguished. And then we increased in our 3rd grade reading for novice. So our goal is to take what we do really well at Beech Grove with reading and focus on our math. We figured that some of those successes about how we purposefully and meaningfully plan for interventions for reading systematically and building-wise, and our RTI approaches, we're now going to take some of those strengths and use them in our math. So we want to start triangulating data and using what's going on in the classroom with our MAP and our K-Prep, as well as our common assessments. We also feel really strongly about having students talk about math and about their learning, raising that metacognition. So we're going to be doing school-wide process for how do we get kids to talk about their learning and reflect on their learning. And we're going to intentionally plan core instruction activities. Big this year on focus on rigor and deepening learning. And we find ways of doing that, particularly in math, in our problem solving, our critical analysis of problems. We're not really much on the problem solution, but how did we arrive at that solution? So I think that we can move on into our gap.
Oh, hold on just a second. When we're
Sure.
looking at that on the math scores there, when you see this decrease kind of across the board, is it a curriculum issue at that point or an instructional issue?
Oh, I think it's both. What I've identified is we put a lot of emphasis in Beech Grove over the last several years in reading. And we need to bring the pendulum to continue that strength in reading, but we need to be looking at some focusing on all of our tiers, mainly our core instruction.
I was looking at that goal that you have for 2019.
Mm-hmm.
That's a 3% increase.
Yes.
So you must have a well laid out plan for this math.
And it begins with naming and claiming and looking at those interventions. In a previous school mentioned the 8-week, we're doing 4 weeks. to see if that intervention works. And we're meeting we're meeting more often. In addition to our usual PLCs, we have math data meetings. So yeah, we're intentionally looking at ways to get those numbers up. So our gap, if you take a look at our non-duplicated, particularly in our free and reduced, at that 71.8% of our fifth graders, and that's compared to 69% of our 69.79% of all reading students. We're really proud of that. We're also looking at our fifth grade novice at 1562, where our all reading students are at 15.63, and then our fourth grade math. We do want to talk about a shining moment there in our proficiency. We are up in our non-duplicated gap in that fourth grade. So we're looking at how that is how we're doing that and applying that to across the board. Areas of growth, again, we want to reduce the novice. We are up higher than I'd like to be, 21.62%. We want to make sure that our proficient and distinguished goes higher. Reading students in the non-duplicated. And the way we think about how we're going to increase that is, again, taking a purposeful attempt to looking at tracking assessment data, classroom data, instructional data, so that we can name and claim students, not just to create a chart, but to meet in our PLCs to say what's working in your classroom, how can we learn from each other, and what are we going to do to make sure these students and all students are moving forward. And I think that begins with a meaningful awareness of what we're doing in everyday core math instruction. And that might mean for Beech Grove to be looking at a systematic approach to a program where we don't have necessarily a textbook math program, and we are certainly looking at research-based math interventions across all grade levels. And we want to partner and collaborate with our district consultants to help us increase those math numbers. Take a look at our growth slide. The percentage of our fifth grade reading students and our fifth grade math students that showed typical or higher growth, we're celebrating that, as well as our fourth grade reading students that had typical or higher growth. We're also very aware that our math students, when we look at our novice apprentice in fifth grade, our novice apprentice in fourth grade, and then our reading in fourth grade. Some strategies to address those growth areas. Better utilization of programs I already have in our building that's not well utilized. Mastery Connect, daily flashbacks, spiral reviews, problem solving. Again, increasing in addition to regular PLC meetings, math data meetings, and then we are tracking RTI intervention data weekly. Take a look at our transition ready. Again, our fifth grade writing and our fifth grade reading, the number of students performing at the proficient and distinguished, we're very proud of that. We're also proud of our writing students in the non-duplicated group scoring at the proficient or distinguished. Areas for growth, our math students in proficient and distinguished, social studies, also proficient and distinguished, as well as our reading students at the novice level. We're looking closely at some programs like Eureka Math and Extra Math, and we want to bring those into everyday core instruction, not just intervention instruction. Increasing our math instruction, our math RTI instruction to 30 minutes daily, and partner with district consultants to work with individual teachers so that that core instruction gets beefed up. At this time, I will invite Ms. Rabe to talk about our next slides.
So I'm going to talk about opportunity and access. In the area of PBIS, we met Fidelity for the Tier 1 on the TFI. And that the TFI, it's a measurement of how effective the PBIS strategies are. And so now we're focusing on Tier 2. And then also for chronic absenteeism, Martha had mentioned that the district average is 8.6. Our average is 4.9. And that is with 60% free and reduced lunch and 52 students identified homeless. So that is something that we, really take very seriously. We want them there at school, however we need to get you there. So we worked very very closely, our RBTL, Reducing Barriers to Learning team on the school level as well as with the district level. So that 4.9 percentage is something that we're very proud of. I'm sorry. Oh, okay, I'll talk quicker. And one way that we do, that we work closely with the RBTL team is we've started a mentoring program and, naming and claiming our students that we have concerns, and whether it's behavior, academic concerns. So the mentoring program, we identify those students that are struggling and we match them with an adult in our building. And some adults have 2 students, some adults have 1. And basically that's, meeting with them a couple times a week. How are you doing? How's it going? How was your ball game last night? And forming that relationship. At Beech Grove, relationships, and every school, but relationships are very important because they are challenged. Our students are struggling with so many different things in their lives. So we have very high expectations for all our students, no matter what their challenges are, and we form those relationships. So
What's your enrollment?
We're
we
at
have
718.
So 71 students with behavioral referrals, roughly, and then of that 71, 17% of those, so 12, 13 of them have been repeat offenders. Kind of.
yes.
Yes.
And I'm really hoping that mentor program helps with that. Meeting with those students that, we know are having issues repeatedly.
Transient population, it's probably close to 10-15%.
Is that your highest free and reduced ever? Probably is.
I'm
Last year
sorry.
we were at 60, and this year we're up to 63.
63,
So
yes.
Is that the highest number? I'm sorry, what's K?
I think we're second.
Kaywood is higher than us this
higher
year.
for the first time.
They go back and forth, so they're both right here.
I think we typically have been the highest in the county, but Kaywood is higher this year.
Literally 1 week, they were higher, and next week, K.
And I'm almost certain that we are the highest McKinney-Vento, students identified in McKinney-Vento, homeless students in the district-wide.
Your absentee
So.
number is also
Yeah.
I know.
4.9.
Thank you.
Do you want to go with the celebrations real quick?
Sure. I'm sorry.
Real quick.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to talk very quickly. Okay. This is the 4th year that consecutively that we are a distinguished school, which we are super proud of. 65.7% of the students at proficient and distinguished in writing. Our students in the GAP group in reading are within 8.1% of all reading students. And our attendance with after-school clubs and activities has increased 54.2%. So I think that goes back to, we want our students to have ownership of their school. We are very involved with the families. We have high expectations for every student, no matter where you're coming from, what challenges you have. But at the same time, we're going to provide resources for those students. So. Did I forget any celebrations? Okay.
You got it.
Back on your first slide, when you talk about proficiency, you're reading IEP students at proficient distinguished. That was a huge jump. What do you think brought that success last year?
I think we had a purposeful focus on collaboration between regular ed and special ed, and we designed opportunities for that collaboration to occur in the school day and before and after the school day, and both parties were willing to do that. So I think that's the contributing factor.
All right, so my 2 questions, just because I have one. What makes you most proud of Beech Grove?
She just said it. There are no excuses. Every teacher in that building takes every student every day when they walk through that door and takes them the highest level that they can reach without worrying about, well, they're coming in with this or that, or not with this or not with that. High expectations is what I'm most proud of. I took over the school knowing that, and I'm proud to say we're continuing that.
All right, well,
First of all, I'd like to introduce myself, Sarah Callahan, the principal at Ryland, and Tammy Harris, the assistant principal. Want to thank the board just for your continued support, and just really appreciate that. I'm really excited to be part of Team Kenton and that we are a distinguished district once again. This is my 29th year in Kenton County School District, and Tammy's 27th. Yeah.
How many years principal?
This is my 4th year.
4th year.
Yep. And so I'm just very proud to be part of this excellent district, and also proud of Ryland. We scored proficient on the K-Prep last year. I hope that we're able to bring back the distinguished. We dropped a little bit this year, but we do have an amazing staff, and I believe when you have great adults, you have a great school. And there isn't one member of the staff that isn't committed to excellence and meeting each of the child's needs. You can feel the passion that we have for our students, I think, the moment you walk through the door. So I hope that you all will come and visit us. So on the proficiency, our 5th grade was really strong overall last year, and you can see our strengths were all in the 5th grade with the reading, the math, and the on-demand. We had high percentages of students that scored proficient and distinguished. Overall, for our growth areas for proficiency, you'll see math listed in 2 of those data points, and math is one of those focus areas for us that we want to continue to try to bring that up. And our reading for our GAP students was 56% of those students scored below proficiency. So I know we'll talk about GAP in a moment, but that's also a concern. So some areas that we're dealing with that, some strategies, is we want to have intentional monitoring of rigorous instruction through lesson plan review, grade level tracking, data tracking, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Excited about how we are really tracking the students. PPR walks with feedback, and then data boards where we really identify the students' needs. And then implementation of math instructional model. We started this last year, but we're really getting more intentional with that and making sure that it is in the teacher's lesson plans and then following through in the classroom for instruction. And that math model includes individual problem solving, a spiral review with flashbacks, and guided instruction, small group differentiated instruction, and then assessment, and that's taking place each day within the math classroom.
We're also going to look at, we're borrowing from our friends at White's Tower in Kenton to look at doing weekly assessments, and one of the consultants, Julie Yates, is going to be helping us set that up next week. Actually, I think we start rolling that out with our teachers to kind of gradually get them into that weekly monitoring each week on Fridays, a formative assessment Friday type of thing. And so we're going to be working with teachers where they're developing those assessments, and so we're looking at data. Well, we look at data pretty much weekly, but looking at how they're actually doing each week. So
just being more intentional with that, with those assessments. And then for our GAP students, our strengths, the 5th grade reading, again, our 5th grade was really strong last year. About 56% of our GAP students in reading scored proficient and distinguished. Social studies was 63.4% of the GAP students, and then writing was about 61. So again, our 5th grade was strong overall for proficiency and GAP. Again, MAP is an area of growth. You'll see that about 30% of our 3rd through 5th graders scored proficiency, our GAP students, and then reading, only about 43% of the 3rd through 5th grade GAP students scored proficiency. And our overall, hate to say this, GAP score was 27.3. It did fall. So major concern for us, an area of growth.
Melina, this would just be very helpful for future. If they put where they were last year and what this year is, they can help me answer
Last year
this
we were
question.
about 47.
Thank you.
Why do you think it fell?
We're really looking at that to figure out why. You do have stronger classes that come through. I don't want to use that as an excuse though, but just trying to figure out, looking at our collaboration, our tier 1, what are all students getting for the core, and then seeing what we're doing special for those students for their specially designed instruction. So just really trying to make sure that we're intentional with that gap instruction.
So what would you do differently, because you have the same strategy listed for this year as you did last year, where it says intentional monitoring of rigorous instruction. So if that's staying the same, what are you going to do different if the scores fell?
Yeah, so
what would you do to make sure that doesn't happen for this next?
So for the GAP students, one thing, and I heard, I believe Beech Grove mentioned this, We are going to have every 3rd through 5th grade gap student have an adult mentor in the school other than their teacher, and that's going to be about 160 kids. So if we took every staff member will have about 3 students that they are really looking at each week. They're meeting with those students, they're looking at their assessments, they're looking to see how they're doing, making that connection, but just letting the kids know that we are here, but we're also have high expectations and are watching to see what how you're doing each week. So that is something that's new. The data boards, I mentioned it on the proficiency slide also, but the data boards are something that's new. We have created electronic data boards and trifold boards. The electronic data boards are all-encompassing for a grade level. So we have a math board and a reading board. They're electronic, but on that electronic data board, we have the students listed. We have identified if they're GAP, if they're special ed, what other issues do we need to know about, perhaps McKinney-Vento, a behavior issue, they're living with grandparents, parent just died, that kind of information. And then we have what RTI that they're in. Were they in RTI in the past? So if they are in 4th grade and they've had RTI for the last 3 years, what's going on? How come we're still having that? And then also what are the interventions that are taking place? And then we're also tracking their assessment data and their grades within this data sheet. And so we can go across at our PLC meetings and look at kids and really doing that naming and claiming. What are we doing about this student where we see that we're not making the progress? So that's something that's new. Do you want to tell them about the trifold boards?
Yeah, we've set up trifolds, and basically the data boards, the electronic data boards are kind of your one-stop shop. So everything is there that we can get in there and look at and see, what the kids are doing and monitor the kids. So at any given time, we should be able to check that. So that, I think that goes to that, what we're doing more intentionally with monitoring. But we've taken the just trifold boards, like science boards, and we have just every kid on an index card with their picture on there, and then we've put all of their assessment data on there, and then we've kind of categorized them with the red, yellow, and green lights, and moving those around. We've identified the GAP kids on there to see, so we know they've got a little dot, so we know that's a GAP kid. It just really puts a face to a score, and to, when you see a face of a child, I don't know, there's that greater sense of responsibility when it's that little baby there that's really the one that's struggling. So I think those data boards really help us with just keeping that face in front of us, that's why we're there, is for those kids.
Where are those boards housed?
We kind of they kind of float back and forth between her office and my office. So and they fold up, so we just kind of slide them in, but we can pull them out, and then the teachers can look at those. We look at them during a PLC, so they can check on them.
And we started that trifold board really in August.
Yeah, we did.
And then we heard about the data boards and decided we wanted to go to more of an electronic version. I like the trifolds because the picture is there, and we're putting that right in front of the teachers, and we're saying who is claiming this child and what are we doing to help them. So I like both. I don't know if we'll continue both next year, but yeah. And you want to tell about 21st?
And then our 21st century grant, we've had the 21st century at Ryland for about 14 years altogether now. We lost it for a couple years, and then got that grant back again. But our site coordinator works really, really closely with us to make sure we're identifying those kids that have the greatest needs, to make sure that those are the kids that are getting into the program priority-wise. And then also just, she's very proactive about making sure that we're meeting those kids' needs, and then like with homework help, and also the enrichment things after school. So we see a lot of those GAP kids don't have those opportunities, and our 21st century makes sure they're just really working so hard with us to make sure that they have opportunities that everybody else has.
I know I got the 1-minute warning. So on the growth slide, I'm going to go past the data unless somebody has a question about one of those data points. But we are having all students set goals, and we use NWA through what the MAP assessment is with. The teachers get on there and they help set the goals for where the students should be. Also, our students, I'll just mention, have the data notebooks in many of the grade levels, and each student has their own binder, and they're setting lots of goals. Accelerated reader, MAP, math fluency, reading fluency, and the kids are getting involved in the goals.
Ms. Callahan is pushing them on these math facts, and they had, what was our November?
Oh, know your facts November.
Yeah, and
Or November, know your facts.
she's stopping them in the hallway going, what's 8 times 7?
Because we got to have that math fluency down, you know, to be able to solve problems. All students that are below the 40th percentile in reading and or math participate in RTI, and that's part of our data boards. We're looking to see, okay, this is what they scored, what is their intervention. We're tracking that as some of the other schools had mentioned. And then myself and Mrs. Harris and the teachers, we meet with all of our 4th grade students in the fall. We go over their K-Prep score from the year before, and we either are really excited with them, or we kind of talk to them and give them a pep talk about what can we do this school year to get to what our goal would be to be proficient or distinguished. And so we will meet with them again in the spring, and we also do the celebration with the medals and just celebrate the MAP scores throughout the year with them too. For the transition ready, overall, as I mentioned, 5th grade was strong last year, so we continue to look for students to be ready at all grade levels, especially, you know, looking at that 3rd grade reading and then moving on up to be at grade level. But the areas of growth, again, I mentioned the 40th and percentile on MAP. If they're below that, they'll be in RTI. We already mentioned that we will continue to analyze MAP and common assessment data. And then the GAP students will meet with their mentor weekly, as I already mentioned. And then our opportunity and access, we're excited about our overall attendance last year. We know they need to be in the school to learn, and so we want to continue that. And another strength that we have been is just trying to reach the whole child. And we have a program called Super Families, and it's basically a relatives raising relatives. We found that we have a large number of guardians in our school. We have aunts, great aunts and uncles, grandparents, people that aren't even related, raising kids. And they have come to us for support, and we decided to create a program. Last year we called it Super Families because we were the superheroes, so we just kept that name. They come together every month. The kids ask when we're going to have it. They're excited about it because we provide dinner and they get to do crafts while we work with the relatives on just building into them to be even better, you know, parents to these students. And then something else that we really try to teach is character education. And once a month we have what we call Wonderful Wednesdays. And we build into the kids with celebrations. So we celebrate the attendance. We celebrate the character education that we are doing. And then we have a time when we have clubs. And every student 1st through 5th grade is involved in an extracurricular club that they have a passion for. We are, one of our growth areas is to decrease chronic absentee rate from 6% to 4%. And so one more slide, Melina. I'm going to go to the celebrations. We are excited about our on-demand writing. It has increased each year over the last several years, and our K-Prep score this last year was 88.2. Social Studies K-Prep score was another highlight, a 96.8. Carla Ottinger, our 5th grade teacher, was represented down in Frankfurt as a KDE finalist, Kentucky Teacher of the Year. And I already mentioned the Wonderful Wednesdays. We are just building into those kids, and 100% of our 1st through 5th graders get to be involved in some type of extracurricular activity through that.
So what made you most proud last year?
I am very proud of our students. I'm also very proud of our staff. When you come into our school, I think everybody feels that they know our staff loves our kids. And we are committed, and we want the best for the kids. So our goal, our areas, our strategies for growth, we just have to figure out what is it that those kids need, because our teachers are already committed. We have such a family feel when you walk into our building, and the teachers, we don't have a turnover rate at Ryland. Teachers don't leave unless they retire, so it's a great building.
What's your free and reduced?
Free and reduced is about 43% this year, I believe, and it's gone up. That's up from what it has been, and our enrollment's about 530 with preschool.
So what do you hope next year when you sit here next year?
I hope that our GAP scores are higher than what they are, because we do have amazing teachers. We have just got to figure out how do we meet the needs of those students, and just making sure that those GAP students are getting a strong core and then getting the specially designed instruction to help them meet their needs.
And I will brag on them real quick, the reality store that you all done. What you call it?
Reality Zone.
Reality Zone. It was one of the better, they give kids money and they have to budget, and they've got all these things they go through. And I know a lot of schools do that, and I've seen a lot of them. I was really impressed.
Thank you.
Hey,
Oh, hey, thank you guys. Trying to get this party started here. First of all, just want to say thank you for giving me a job. We appreciate that in the perpetuity. Hey, you don't bite the hand that feeds you now. Come on. But just thank you guys. We're really blessed to be a part of Kenton County, and we're really blessed to be surrounded by great people. First of all, our assistant principal, Miss Cobb. We've been together 4 years now, and just outstanding. Our counselors, Mr. Hendricks, just an outstanding administrative team, Sally Fortney, the FRC. Really blessed. I've been able to work with Melina Owens for 4 years. This is my 4th year working with her, and she was there, and then they kind of reconfigured some things, so she's over all the elementary schools. But drop of the hat, if I need something or anything, of course I always get the text. I'm in the meetings, emergency, do I need to step out? But just been a great mentor to me, and just helps out tremendously. Courtney Pitts is our instructional coach. Whenever we ask her, come in and model stuff and do an observation, she's always just right there, and just there's great communication, and I got you feeling, but how can I help you feeling? And I appreciate that. So we'll get started with our proficiency. We had a pretty good year last year. Overall, reading and math, you can see, is about 70% proficient distinguished. That's 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. My biggest question is, who are the 30%? You know, where are the 30%? That's the way I look at that. You know, great job for those kids, but we got to get those other 30% in there. Language mechanics was one of our highest scores, 76.7, proficient distinguished in language mechanics. The 4th grade teacher did a great job on that. They work hard all year long. I believe in the process of things. We don't have events. We believe in the process. So they do a great job building those things in throughout the whole school year to reach those goals. Some of our school data, if I talk too fast, if you got a question, just holler at me, okay? So I know a lot of people haven't gotten through, so I'm kind of going quick. 61.8% proficient distinguished on on-demand. That was low for us. We'd actually dropped on our 5th grade on-demand writing last year. So we're working on that now. We're working on some of that now. 7.4 novice in reading. This is 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, and 7.1 novice in math. In my eyes, there's no student should be novice. None. No student should be novice. That's just my expectation, my feeling. And those students, again, we're identifying those students and with some things, and I'm going to talk about a little bit about that. But no way any student should be novice. No way. So 22.3% of apprentice readers. We have, like I said, 22% of those 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders scored apprentice. We got to get them to proficiency. We need to push those kids, get them to proficiency. You know, that's almost a quote. You know, that's 20% of the school. You know, there's no way. We got to get them to proficiency. So that's one of our things. How are we going to do that? You know, co-teaching with the classroom teacher, special education teacher. We're going to identify those, get those in there. Scoring collaboration. Our teachers do a great job of showing good work, but also having that expectation of good work, but then relaying it to the special ed teachers, things like that. You know what? We understand your student has a disability. We are empathetic, not sympathetic. We understand what's going on, but it's not a crutch. You're not going to get away with anything. We're going to hold you that same accountability. So working with our special ed teachers, we're going to increase our Friday assessment on-demand assessments as well. And we always do data tracking and things like that for our PLCs. We still have math and reading RTI. When we first started our venture 4 years ago, we were very specific and put in a math and reading RTI blocks. Those are non-negotiable. We don't mess with those. The kids, and not only for our Tier 3 kids, but our accelerated kids get a block in there too. So we're trying to reach every single student in the building. Like I said, our RTI means we block out a whole day for just 2 grade levels. Very focused, very intentional. So we're meeting every kid's need, not just the Tier 3 kids, Tier 2, Tier 1, even those kids that are accelerated. So again, that's where we're identifying the students. We're doing more progress monitoring using Mastery Connect and our data board. Dr. Webb got a chance to see that. So, and we provide intervention and support with the students who need it. As far as our gap goes, man, we're really fortunate. I'll tell you what, 100% of our gap kids scored in novice reduction. So we were number 1, and that's on the last slide. When Mr. Webb, Dr. Webb, gave us his little calculations, and he's a pretty smart guy, so I'm gonna trust his calculations. But when he's got Weiss Tower number 1, I had to double check this calculation. No, but we ended up being one of the top schools in the state in novice reduction for gap students. So again, we're pretty happy about that. We increased the gap points from 37 to 79.1. Crazy, crazy. Our third, fourth, and grade math gap, those gap kids scored 66.9. So almost 7 out of 10 kids that are called, quote unquote, your gap students, were proficient distinguished. That's awesome.
So what was the most successful strategy or the technique you were using to do that? You know, that's a huge
Yes,
increasing gap points.
yes, sir. Dr. Webb's got me sharing my ideas now. No. When we first, I know. Well, it's like, well, you've heard people say name and claim a couple times today. When we first started our 4 year, this is our 4th year together. We had a student draft board. We literally had the kid's picture, their name. You remember we talked about, we pulled the teacher's name out of a little hat, and it's like the NFL draft. They get to pick and choose. Now, we are intentional with some folks. We want those folks, if you're a special ed teacher, we know that come testing time, you're going to be providing accommodations with that student. So we're going to strategically match you up with them. So we're building those relationships, you know, just like our Miss Connie, our special education collaborative IA. You know, she has certain relationships with students. Right now, she's working with a lot of kindergarten and first grade students, but we know she's going to have to provide accommodations for one of our older kids. So December, the first Wednesday in December is our draft day. So come on by if you like. There's no drinks, no nachos. You know, we're not holding it at BW3s, but what we do is, you know, we'll intentionally get Miss Connie matched up with that kid. And when we start our Friday assessments, January, February, March, these teachers, I mean, they go in before school starts and writes notes to the kids. Good luck on your math assessments day. You'll see little goodie bags on them, but the big thing is the follow up. They'll follow up, say, how'd you do on that math assessment? Things like that. That just has become part of our culture that we started 4 years ago. So, again, Mr. Crabtree, relationships, expectations, relationships, and holding kids accountable. So, and we got some pretty doggone good teachers too. I'm not gonna lie about that. We got some good teachers. So, you know, where do we need to work? On-demand writing. 49%, only 49% were proficient distinguished on on-demand writing in that gap group. The 5th grade math, only 49% were proficient distinguished. And 3rd grade math, students with disability, that just puts a bad taste in my mouth. 43.8 are novice and apprentice, those 3rd grade students. That's why we're increasing that. We're increasing our special ed teacher and the regular ed teacher collaboration. You know, we're being very specific with those kids. How are they taking the test? Where are they taking the test? When are they taking the test? And then what are you doing after they take the test? How are you following up with that student? Again, mastery of the standard that's being taught for that time. Mr. Crabtree, you see number 1, bottom one, our gap student draft board. You know, we're, again, intensifying math RTI, reading RTI. We're doing additional standards and data tracking, identifying those kids, progress monitor those kids, and provide them with support. Overall growth, our overall growth percentage in reading was 3.8, math 6.4, combined 5.1. 74% of our 5th grade made growth in math, 76 made it in reading. On the flip side of that, 4th grade, we didn't see that growth. And it wasn't from our gap kids. Our gap kids made their growth, made their knowledge reduction. So what we're doing right now is we're doing some more flexible grouping after our Friday's assessments. We're doing flexible grouping during our RTI team. So those kids are not locked into a group. You know, not all of our kids are going to Miss Hall's math class. It's changing every 2 weeks. After they take a math assessment, they identify the specific deficiencies and skills that those certain kids are missing and then regroup those kids. Now, the kids that do well on the assessment, we got to push them further. That's our accelerated group.
Every 2 weeks.
Well, it's whenever a math assessment comes up. We do reading as well, but reading isn't as intense. Like, we still have our reading intervention times, but math is something we do pretty much after every math assessment. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Again, if you want to go down to number 3, 33% of our 5th grade gap students did not meet the growth in math. So they made growth, but they didn't meet the state, the quote unquote, what the state wanted them to meet in growth. Again, you're going to see those same things, flexible RTI grouping, what I just talked about, the student draft, and then progress monitoring. Ms. Cobb is going to talk a little bit about transition ready.
So with regards to our fifth grade students, we had some of our fifth grade students did perform very well in certain areas from when we were looking at preparing those students for middle school and making sure they're ready at transition points. So when you look at overall students, we had over 75% of our fifth graders that were proficient and distinguished in social studies. We also had over 68% that were proficient or distinguished in reading, and we had 64% that were proficient and distinguished in math. However, when you looked at our students with disabilities, we realized that that's really an area of growth for us with those fifth grade scores. We only had 20% of our students with disabilities who were proficient and distinguished in social studies, a little over 6% who were proficient or distinguished in math, and 13% in writing. So we realized that that's definitely an area of growth. And as Mr. P's already said, you know, a lot of those things that we have in place, those are things that we're going to continue to do to look at the fifth grade, become very intentional on the collaboration, the co-teaching with our special education teacher and our classroom teachers, and look at activities that we can meet the learning styles of all of those students while we're intentionally tracking and looking at student progress. And then at the growth areas, those are some things that we have in place just for those students as far as transitioning to the middle school, making sure that we're collaborating with the middle schools and making sure that we know what those students' needs are so that when they go to the middle school that they're ready to pick up and help those students be successful. We also do transition points with the middle school counselors, taking the kids over, and also the middle school visits to help those students prepare for that transition, because that's a hard time, for especially for those students with disabilities. So regarding...
Hey,
The last page?
when the boss tells you to stop, you stop. I'm not, Melina, I'm not messing with her. I know. It's funny. I'm starting to rub off on her every day. It's good. Go do the celebrations page.
Oh,
Do the
okay.
best page.
So we're going to go to celebrations.
Yeah, we're gonna you know.
With regard to celebrations, we were a distinguished school or school of distinction, and we're very, very excited about that. We were first in state with GAP student novice reduction, which, like Mr. P said, we were just ecstatic. And we were top 10% in the state with third grade math proficient and distinguished, third grade math proficient and distinguished, non-duplicated GAP, fourth grade language mechanics proficient and distinguished, fourth grade language mechanics proficient and distinguished for non-duplicated GAP, fourth grade reading proficient and distinguished, and fourth grade reading proficient and distinguished, non-duplicated GAP. So we were very excited about all of those things, very proud of our students and our staff. Great school.
So what makes you most proud?
I'm trying to say something. What makes us most proud? I think Ms. Cobb and I both would say the kids and the teachers.
Some kids.
I mean, the kids do a great job. They know the expectation. Ms. Cobb and myself, every Friday we walk through every single classroom. If it's a spelling test, Friday assessment, we tell them the proficient or distinguished, the only two. We on our boards, we don't give out A, B's, and C's. Parents walk by and say, "Oh my gosh, my kid's got a D on this test, and it's hanging in the middle of the hallway. It's a distinguished."
Oh.
No, but Ms. Collins, you know, it's just we're proud of the kids. We're proud of the teachers. Just come to work every day and work your butt off, and good things happen.
So I have to say, you're a real force in the community. I hear about it all the time. They talk about Mr. P. And of course, Michelle, the hometown gal, she could walk into her mom and dad's and need me. So I hear about this all the time. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Like I said, I'm very blessed to have Ms. Cobb. It's been 4 years. This is our fourth year together, and it's great. We love it. It's a great school, good kids, good parents, community. Again, we're just blessed.
But what do you hope to see next year?
You know, I was thinking about this ever since you started asking the question. Man, you can ask anything for me. You know, we've been really fortunate. For the past 2 out of the 3 years we've been together, we were able to be ahead in Kenton County. We want to continue that success. I know we got a big bullseye on our back. Miss Huss is always coming after us. I'm not going to lie, I know that. But, you know, we eventually want to work our top way in the top 10 in the state. You know, that's a goal. I mean, if you're not going to go for that high goal, then get out of the job. You know, that's my thing.
And if I can make 2 quick comments, I want to thank you all for sharing your best practices. They've had a few people from our district go visit, and that's one of the things we're trying to do. We see, and every school's got great things going on, but if we find those, people willing to share them, and you all have done that, so thank you. So
I just give you a hard time. I apologize.
No, really, publicly, I wanted to acknowledge that because we know that you're sharing, and many people are, but I know many people's copied your Friday assessments, and that's really important.
Well, I think it's a testament. I mean, it's a good thing.
Gotta keep some secrets though.
No.
See, I told you.
Competitive.
All right. Well, again, thank you guys. We appreciate it. And if you ever need anything, just holler at us.
We are so grateful to be here, and this is such an exciting day for us. Alex and I have officially been at Hinsdale together just shy of 2 months. So, yeah, we're about to have our 2-month anniversary, and so here we are, and we are thrilled to have such great news to share with you about Hinsdale, as you could tell from our report. And I wanted to start with our hashtag. This is something that I came up with this summer, and Suzanne Smith and I actually worked on it together, and then as Alex has transitioned, he's just been able to come on board. And this hashtag is kind of a couple of things, RCH being our school initials, but also it also is an abbreviation for reach, and higher, reach higher, because we want to take Hinsdale higher. So I wanted to kind of give you that background as we get started here, because Hinsdale has such a strong reputation, and we are excited to carry on that reputation. So with our proficiency scores, this is obviously a bit challenging because we were not here last year to really do the work that these scores yielded, but nonetheless, we're accountable for them, and we're responsible, and we are taking this information, and again, we're going higher. But we have lots to celebrate, and we have done quite a bit of celebrating with our teachers because they have been working hard. Our students have been working hard. In 3rd and 5th grade reading, our percent of proficient distinguished was really something to celebrate this year. 87.3 for 3rd grade and 83.5 for 5th grade, so we're really excited about that. The 3rd grade reading for disability group with IEPs, that was 81.8% proficient distinguished. Our 3rd grade, you can see from the math percentages, the 3rd grade team rocked it out, and the data was pretty amazing. And to look at our math scores, we were number 12 in the state, is a really big accomplishment. The growth areas, though, we really see some opportunities with our 4th grade reading and math. Those percentages are just not as high, and we're looking at ways that we can address that, and we're looking kind of across the board. We have students coming into 4th grade that are really strong, and so how are we going to continue to push them, because even that 5th grade math percent is 61.2 is definitely not where we want it. And you'll see our proficiency goal there, that to increase percentage of proficient distinguished in combined reading and math from 74.2 in 2017 to 83.3. We've got a lot of ground to cover by 2019. So what we've discovered is, as we have started working with our team at Hinsdale, they've had pockets of RTI existing across the building, but they haven't had a building-wide RTI plan that has existed as far as grade levels can kind of have treated it differently depending on their needs. The student population is changing, so we're really looking at how we can, even now, we've started developing a school-wide RTI plan, which is really interesting because as you make changes in this midst of a school year, a lot of things come along with that. But we're pressing onward, and we're really trying to look at how we've visited White's Tower, and as you know, they've had a lot of success. So we're going to continue modeling our work after their successes, and we aren't afraid to do that at all, because if it works, it's good for our kids. We have been working on our assessment schedule and looking at common assessments, and Julie Aites has been amazing to work with us on that. And obviously our weekly PLCs, we analyze our map data. We're using the data board, like has been mentioned several times here, and really looking at our assessment data. Moving on to GAP, our 3rd grade GAP students, the percentage of proficient distinguished, 78.8%, was a really high number for us for those GAP students, and we beat that state average for our 4th grade GAP group, and our 3rd grade math GAP group, proficient distinguished, 66.7. We have some areas to grow. Obviously, those 5th grade numbers, those are reflected in the students that are no longer with us, but at the same time, we know that that addresses in many ways the needs that exist. Even if you separate the students from the instructional issues that exist, we want to make sure that our GAP students, our numbers tell us that they're not necessarily achieving at the rate of our non-GAP students. And so we're looking at how we address that with Do the Math interventions. Moby Max is a school-wide intervention, not just 3rd, 4th, and 5th, but we're using Moby Max across the board. We're even using Do the Math. It's not an intervention that necessarily works in the primary grades as well. There's some pieces of it that work, so we're utilizing that. And the PLC process is also a place where we've identified our gap students. We have our data boards going with those, and our special education team is really dialed into those gap students. And we only have a special ed team of 3 teachers. So, and we have 1 special ed assistant. So there's just a lot that has to be done to make sure that those gap students are achieving. And the growth, the same thing with the growth. That's an area of opportunity for us, and we want to celebrate that growth that we're seeing in reading, but we also have some areas to grow in math. Specifically, that student growth percentage in math at 59.2, that's a growth opportunity. Our reading and math combined student growth percentage is 65.6, and our categorical growth. Those are numbers that we want to see continue to increase, and we're utilizing a 5th grade math club that's going to target interventions for those students that we know are not on grade level. Moby Max is being utilized for enrichment. And we actually are using reflex math for some of our intermediate students that don't have fact fluency down. And again, the PLC's process will help us monitor that. Alex is going to take on transition readiness. And no, I'm doing transition readiness. Your opportunity to access.
Okay. What the 5th grade math club, did you say is that voluntary? Kids can stay, or they?
No, it's volunteer. They're invited in. It's a lot of times those bubble kids.
Asked to stay.
Yes, that are really like close to meeting that proficient distinguished. They're just kind of sitting in that apprentice, low, medium apprentice, right on the bubble there. We've done a lot of work with our 5th grade. And specifically, we've looked at schedules. If you look at, not to move too quickly, but I know time's of the essence, but we've revised the 5th grade schedule from the start of the school year because we found that the instruction time was just not giving us what we needed to give us. So through the course of restructuring the 5th grade schedule, making sure that RTI schedule was in place, and what those weekly PLCs look like for 5th grade. 5th grade's our only departmentalized grade. So we've got 4 teachers teaching math, English, science, and social studies. And so when you have a schedule, only 5th grade looks like that, then we knew we needed to maximize those numbers. And we really want to grow our 5th graders and see some higher numbers from them this year.
I want you to go back to GAP for just a second. In looking, I'm trying to look at that. Well, I'm kind of looking at 3rd grade reading, number 25 in the state. I'm assuming that 2nd point is somewhat lower just because you put a ranking in there.
Yes, 4th grade definitely.
Yeah, so there seems to be a significant change there. Is that a curriculum or an instructional issue or a combination? But obviously it's more rigorous at 4th grade.
It is.
But is it that much more rigorous that if you're that high, there's going to be that much of a drop still?
No, we definitely feel like we have immediately jumped in on this curriculum and instruction issue, and we have been working with Julie Aites intently with our 4th grade team because we know that there's something's going on there because the numbers look very different. So you're right, Mr. Crabtree, that's been an immediate red flag to us. Something's dipping in the 4th grade. That's really hindering us. You ready for opportunity and access?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So like Dr. Kesselman said, we've had all but 6 weeks together on the job. But something I've noticed about Hinsdale is that our kids come to school. And not only do our kids come to school, but our parents come to school. And so that community support and that community involvement has been fantastic. As you can see, our attendance is the 2nd highest attendance school in the state. It's something that we're very proud of, but it also presents us with an opportunity to be able to reach these kids at a different level and continue that sustained excellence that Hinsdale has been known for throughout the district. Something that we have noticed, though, if you look at our chronic absenteeism, it's at 6.4%. And so what we've really focused on is implementing a deeper strategy as far as our RBTL committee goes. That's something that has existed at Hinsdale in the past, but not to the depth and the breadth that we're going to bring to that. We're using targeted interventions and finding ways to get these kids to come to school and to help them be successful. One of the ways that we're doing that is we're using our special area teachers because they have a unique opportunity to interact with all of our students, not just by grade level, but they see every student within the building. And so what we've done with them is we've kind of set them up to be mentors to these students. And so we've done the name and claim with our special teachers to be able to go through the building as they go through their classes and make connections with these kids and let them know that You are supported. You're an important part of RC Hinsdale, and we're going to do what we can to make you guys feel successful here. We also are beginning to provide professional development opportunities for those special area teachers, how to better reach those types of kids, but also to make them feel more connected to the building processes as a whole. Sometimes it's easy for the special area teachers to feel like they are disconnected or neglected from the rest of the staff because they're not core content. And so we've made an extra concerted effort to involve them and help them in our processes as we've gone through that. Looking at celebrations, obviously, like we stated before, we're at number 2 in attendance for the state, which is fantastic. Our overall achievement score is 90.2. Third grade, like we've stated before, does fantastic as far as our results. They're at number 12 for proficient and distinguished for math, and at number 13 for reading in the state. And our student categorical growth in reading was 76.9.
So kind of knowing a little bit about your population, so when you switch from not doing RTI school-wide to school-wide RTI, what is the communication to the families and to the parents? Are they?
It's been interesting because they know, a lot of them know about RTI, but they're definitely noticing the change, and so that's been a challenge especially through our round of parent-teacher conferences, as they've been coming in to try to help them understand, like we know that there are students that have more significant needs maybe than in the past, so we need to continue looking at ways that we can meet those needs, and RTI we know is the way to do that, but it's a challenge because parents are maybe not as familiar as they've been in the past.
So what makes you, I know, you're coming in and you see Hinsdale and it's a position that you wanted, what makes you proud to be at Hinsdale?
I think I'm very proud and honored to be the principal of Hinsdale because of the strong tradition of excellence, and to know that the students that we have, a lot of them, their parents were patriots, and like a student wore a jacket that was the mom's or dad, somebody had this old patriot jacket and they wore it to school, and I'm like, that's what Hinsdale means. It's a strong tradition. Children come because their parents came, and we want to continue building that reputation of excellence. And our teachers, like a lot of our teachers have taught nowhere else, and collectively have spent over 100 years concurrently they've given to Hinsdale. So when you look at that, teachers that have spent that much of their career there, it's amazing.
So what do you hope to tell us next year?
I hope to tell you that we have, in such a concerted way, been able to address our gap. And it's not a very big group of students. And we need to really make sure that we're meeting those needs, because our numbers tell us that we just need to be doing more for those kids. And that's what I want to be able to share, that we've done more and it's yielded better results.
Thank you guys for having us here today. Just want you to know that Mr. Shacker and I feel like Fort Wright Elementary is the best school ever, and we're super excited to be there and happy to go to work each and every day. So we'll get started with our proficiency. At this time, our strengths are 82.1 novice apprentice proficient distinguished score in math and 85.6 in reading. 51.5% of our students scored proficient and or distinguished in writing, and I know that seems low, but that's an area that we've really been working hard the last 3 years, so we're proud that we're continuing to see those growth occur. As far as growing in proficiency, 13.5% of our students scored novice in reading and in math, so we know that, like Mr. P said, we don't want any student to be novice at Fort Wright Elementary or in the Kenton County School District, so we're going to work hard to bring those novice kids up to proficiency. We had 40.7% of our fourth grade students that scored apprentice in math, and that's a large number in that grade area. And so this school year we're really focused in on looking at their weekly data, giving weekly assessments, and making sure that we're following them week by week so that they're growing to proficiency. Some strategies that we're using in grades kindergarten, 2nd through 5th, we're one-to-one with technology, so we're super excited with that. What that means is students get the opportunity to log into Google Classrooms. For example, I had a parent call me not long ago, and her student was homesick with pink eye, and she said, I just want you to know that this Google Classroom is the best thing that ever happened. And I'm like, why is that? Because my daughter's home, and she's right in there in the Google Classroom following along with everything that's happening, responding to peers and classmates, and my teachers feel the same way, so that's super exciting. Like I talked,
We're working on it.
Okay, I didn't.
Just funding, so we're working on it,
Funding, yeah.
yes. Hopefully by the end of the school year, we will be first grade as well. Weekly assessments, I mentioned that, and our PLCs, they're just intentionally focused this year. I feel like years past, we've really focused in on content and learning experiences and assessments, and this year we're really focused on what those assessments look like per kid and the data for each student.
Tie in those 1, 2, and 3 there, those strategies that you have there,
Mhm.
with that apprentice and math score kind of thing. How are you all going to address that number with those?
With the technology and weekly assessments. So through the technology, they can, we have set up their Google Classroom so that they do different activities with them throughout the day in that different classrooms in the math setting. And then what'll happen on Friday, whether they've taken that assessment on their Chromebook or whether it's paper pencil, because we still use that as well, then we take that data and go through it each week and discuss each individual student and if they're making that progress and if not. And do we need to put RTI, give that student another lesson, whether that's with a small group with a teacher or if that's through a small reteaching through Khan Academy or some other software based on their Chromebook.
Because with a number that big, it makes me wonder, is it instruction, or is it curriculum, or what is it that just...
Because that is a high number of fourth grade students. And when we really honed in on who those students were, we have some of those students that were maybe I think there's like 15 or 16 that were only with us for 100 days. So we're very more transient than some other schools. So I feel like those kids, if they were with me for multiple years, they might not be at that apprentice stage, but we're gonna take those kids and we're gonna own them, we're gonna claim them, and do what we can to get them to proficiency. Okay, for our gap kiddos, our strengths were we reduced our students that are free and reduced lunch status population in math from 14% to 11%, and in reading from 14% to 13%. And that is even with fewer students, so that's super excited, and with 58% population of free and reduced lunch. Some growth areas. 42% of our students in that gap group scored proficient or distinguished in math, and we want that to be 100%. We want that to be all students. We only had half of them scored proficient or distinguished in reading, and 32% of our students with disabilities scored novice in reading, compared to 29% in 2016. So we had an increase in that when we're looking for decreases. So we're going to have to work real hard to make that improvement. And our gap kiddos at Fort Wright include like I said, we have 58% free and reduced population, we have about 10% Hispanic, and then our special education students. So some things that we're doing, kind of like what you've heard before, we've made a special education plan, and that looks like special education teachers are participating in those weekly PLCs with our regular education teachers, so that they're naming and claiming and seeing the strategies being used by the classroom teacher, and then they're also going over the data that they've collected for that student and what strategies they're using, so that we're all consistent for those kiddos. Each CSIB strategy meeting, which is our staff meetings, we just call them our CSIB strategy meetings because it's all professional learning. At each meeting, there's at least one session where teachers get the opportunity to work with their special education team, so that gives them another opportunity to discuss things tweaked that worked this week or didn't work. So really they're getting those 2 opportunities per week. And then this third thing, which is super exciting and thankful to you guys all for letting this happen, is our kindergarten pilot. So we started it last Wednesday. We have 23 students, and I wanted you to know that I'm going to continue to collect data, because that's how we determine the criteria for students to get in the program. And in a couple months, I'll bring you the data so you can see their growth, and then I'll do that again at the end of the school year. So I'm super and thankful. Oh my goodness, yes, it has been nothing but positive things. And everybody wants their kid in there, though. You know how that is. So just constantly relaying the message that we looked at criteria, and if something happens and the student moves, we're going to continue to look at that data. It has to be data informed, so that we make sure that we get the right kids in there, so we can close those gaps early, so that when we get to 4th grade math, there's not a huge apprentice group. Makes sense. Okay. Next up is growth. So 69.9% of our students made typical growth in reading, while 66.7% of them made that growth in math. So we're excited about that. However, we want all kids, like we said before, we want all kids to show that growth and make those improvements. So some things that we have in place for that, really I feel like we're doing these weekly assessments. We're tracking that data. We're making sure that all their lessons have meaningful learning experiences for students. Students are getting assessed on a daily basis. Instruction is being revised so that they can meet the needs of all students, so that all kids can be successful. Okay. Do you want to talk about opportunity and access, and we'll come back to transfers?
Absolutely. So I'd like to just take a minute to discuss about how our team at Fort Wright has grown in the area of RBTL, which is reducing barriers to learning, because it's had a big impact as well. You know, we've talked already about our GAP students, and we have a large percentage of GAP students. And those GAP students, as well as other students throughout the school, have a wide variety of needs and things going on in their lives. And fortunately, you know, our staff has just been so great about taking the development with not only identifying the different barriers to learning, but also the different strategies that can be utilized. Last year, we had what was called a Tuesday truancy meeting, where we would talk and focus mainly on attendance and those chronic absenteeism, where that's really kind of grown into. Now we have a weekly RBTL meeting. So we still discuss things such as truancy, because at the elementary level, it's not just a student issue, it's a family issue that we have to identify what are the needs of that family. Is it a home visit that needs to occur, or some sort of needs that the parent has in order to get the student there every day to learn, but also to talk about all different other barriers that are going on in our students' lives. Might be getting Friday food bags that many of our students get. A wide variety, like I said. And in that meeting, we have myself, counselor Lindsay Wilson, who's outstanding. Our family resource counselor, Abby Elkis, is just a great team member. We also have a North Key therapist there. A district liaison, Tasha Heisel, is there. And then our attendance secretary, Alice Flick. So that's our main group. But we have a communication system that works staff-wide to where anybody on staff can communicate easily about students. We go through every grade level every week, much like our PLCs on focusing on math and reading. We're also focusing on student needs, because we realize we've got to take care of the whole child in order to have them focused and achieving at the levels that we know they can achieve.
Okay, our big celebrations. So we're super excited that we've been distinguished classification for 2 years in a row. We made the top 12% in the state for student growth percentiles and reading, the top 15% in the state for reading achievement, top 19th for language mechanics achievement, and huge thing is that we're going to have a fully renovated school come next school year. I just had to put that in there, because another reason I put it in there is our team, to talk about our team, our culture at Fort Wright Elementary through this whole renovation. We have the most amazing team of teachers, team of administrators, team of students that are so flexible,
Parents,
and
everybody,
parents,
they've
community
been great.
members that have just been fantastic through this entire
It's taken some flexibility, but we know it's going to be outstanding when we're finished, but they've been great through the whole thing. A lot of laughs instead of complaining. Yeah.
And I would be remiss if I didn't thank you all for your leadership during this renovation, because the culture, you've kind of shaped that. So thank you.
Thank you.
We could either make it positive, or we got to make it how it's going to make it work best for all kids.
It's a great place to be.
Yes, it is. Best place.
It is.
So what makes you most proud?
What makes me most proud is really this group of students that we teach every day, our staff that will do anything that I ask.
The whole team.
Yes, our team
The whole
makes
team.
me most proud. You
Yeah.
know, I want to be able to say when we come back next school year or at this time next year, that we are a 5-star school and that we have improved, because we have a high percentage of apprentice students, that they are now proficient students, and that we have 0 novice. All kids. That's my goal.
What's your free and reduced number?
58%. Mm-hmm.
What's your transient population percentage?
Wow. I feel like the last time I looked, it was like 15%.
15%.
Yeah.
And then it may have gone up in the last few weeks.
Yeah.
Every day we have new Falcons, but
And we lose
we have a
some,
system in
too.
place on where we welcome them, make them feel part of it, them a T-shirt right away. You know, they're part of the team right away because,
Absolutely.
like we said, that they
We
come
need
with a
them to
lot of
own
needs.
it. We want them to know that they're loved, and we want them to do their
You better
best.
believe
That
it.
whole relationship piece is so important.
Have you seen where any of them come, leave?
Oh, yeah,
Very
absolutely.
often.
Yeah, we're a very diverse school is what I would tell everybody, but I feel like that's what makes us who we are. We're super proud of that. We love the diversity that we have.
Absolutely.
It's great. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you all.
Okay, well, I'm Jenna Smitty, and I am the new principal at River Ridge Elementary School. And this is Natalie Ewald, and she is the assistant principal. And then we also have an associate principal, who's Dominique Cruey, and she is back at school right about now, getting ready for dismissal.
Natalie.
Natalie.
Last year was my first year.
The
Yes.
other assistants, brand new.
Brand new.
Yes, so Dr. Webb is referring to a conversation he and I had last week where I pointed out to him that we have a brand new administrative team. So I am the new principal, first year principal. Dominique is new from the classroom as the associate principal. And then this is Natalie's second year as an assistant. So she really is the veteran of the group with 1 year behind her in her current role. But that being said, I have been at River Ridge for the last 4 years as an assistant principal. And I feel really fortunate in my experience that I've had because I worked with Shauna Harney for 2 years, and then I also worked with Bill Bradford for 2 years. And I reflected a lot on that when I made the decision to apply for this job. And I couldn't be more set up for success personally after having the honor of working with Shauna and Bill for the years that I did, because Shauna and Bill are two of the strongest leaders I've ever had the honor of working with. And I would say that even if Shauna wasn't in the room right now. That's in my notes. I was prepared to say that. So really, yes, I am new to this role, but I have been part of the River Ridge culture for 4 years now, and it's a really special place to be, and I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to be presenting this to you all this afternoon. I got to tell you, we've been a little anxious today, waiting all day long for this. Thanks for putting us at the end of the day. That's great. Next year, please put us first. But really, I thought this is a great opportunity because how often do we get 10 minutes to just sit and share and talk to a captive audience about all the things that we're doing at our school? And so we are truly excited to be here. So in reflecting on River Ridge and working on our school-wide goals and thinking about what we are doing this year to really address where we are academically at our school, I think a lot about the infrastructure at River Ridge, and I believe because we've had such strong leadership over the last 4 to 6 years, the infrastructure at our school is really strong. And so my goal is to continue to build on that infrastructure. We have a lot of really great instructional practices in place, and we have a lot of great efficient structures and routines and procedure in our school, and that is all ingrained as a part of our culture with the teachers who have been there for a long time, and certainly the new teachers and new administrators who have come on board. So it's really my goal to build on the infrastructure that we do have, because we do have a solid foundation, and that's a great place to start. So that being said, we can go right to proficiency here. So when pulling out this data, we got kind of specific here for a lot of reasons, but we really wanted to highlight our big growth areas in proficiency. So the first data point there is reading. Their fifth grade students scoring proficient distinguished increased from 63.8 to 71.3. And math, that's quite a jump. You'll see that our third grade students scoring proficient distinguished increased from 46.8 to 62.6. That's huge. So looking at our proficiency goal, it is our goal to increase the percentage of combined reading and math students scoring proficient distinguished from 64 to 81% by 2019. So that is why I put our overall proficiency in our growth area, because our overall proficiency in reading and math is 66, excuse me, and 60.9. And so in my opinion, we're a little too far away from that 81% goal. So those numbers to somebody else might look decent, but to us, they're just a little further away than where we ultimately want to be. So what are we doing to address our growth areas for proficiency? We have drastically increased the number of classroom walks that we are doing this year, and I'm really proud of that, because in all the time I've been at River Ridge, getting in our weekly classroom PPR walks has been a struggle, and it still is a struggle. but it is important, and we have really made it a priority. And so we are getting in classroom walks to provide feedback to improve our core instruction, because thinking about proficiency is measuring our achievement toward the standards. And so when we go into our classroom during core instruction, that's the instruction that's happening, is instruction toward the standards. So we spend a lot of time looking at tier 2 and tier 3 and addressing our gap data and our subgroup populations. But we can't forget about our core instruction. So we really have to make sure that we're getting in during our core instruction to give feedback for tier 1 instruction in addition to tier 2 and tier 3. In addition to that, ongoing analysis of common assessments and other classroom assessments, because again, our common assessments are assessing our mastery toward the standards, and that's what proficiency is measuring. So it's important that we continue to have an ongoing analysis of our common assessments, which we do. Sorry, I'm trying to talk really fast. At our weekly PLC meetings with teachers. And we have a pretty good structure in place for that as well. And that's a real collaborative effort. We meet with classroom teachers, administrators, special education teachers. We include intervention staff when we can. But we spend time analyzing the data. And then the most meaningful part of that conversation is looking at where our kids are scoring and talking about what are we going to do differently and how are we going to address that. And we do wrong answer analysis, and we look for trends in the data and tie that back to our instruction and really focus in on what do we need to do differently to increase our scores and get our kids closer to proficiency.
So taking that data that you've been looking at, what has it taught you about this 48% of students scoring below proficiency in writing? What have you learned from that, and what are you going to do about it?
Well, I would actually like to table that because I'm going to talk about writing in another slide because writing is that's glaring there. And we actually have some other writing data that we're going to look at. So are you okay with that?
Sure.
Okay, excellent. All right.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about GAP. In addition to making sure that all of our students are being given better Core 1 instruction, this year, while we took on a whole new administrative team, we also decided that we were going to restructure our GAP, our RTI structure, which will address our GAP students. So instead of reading what's up there for you, I want to tell you about it because I'm really excited about it. I have been engrossed in this since last year. She's been engrossed in it since before that. So when we restructured our RTI this year, what we did is we really took it and we said we're going to name and claim, and we're going to have kids really be part of a group that is best for them. So not just here are our groups, where are we going to fit them in? It's what groups do we need and what are we going to do to meet those students' needs? So we looked at data, and we're looking at tons of data. We're looking at MAP, K-Prep, common assessments, System 44, Read 180 data, everything you can think of, classroom informal assessments. And we have all of that in one place on our Google Drive. And every week in our PLC meetings, we are meeting with regular ed teachers, special education teachers. Title staff comes to our reading ones that will be starting in January. Our EL teacher is involved in that as well because our GAP students look a little different. We have 177 kids who are special education in our school, 96 who are English language learners, and we have over 22 languages spoken in the homes in our school. So it looks a little different to us because we have a lot of things that we have to look at first. But in our new structure, we are meeting every 6 weeks, and we're looking at the data not just from the progress monitoring from tier 2 and tier 3, but also what does the EL teacher have to tell us about how those students are performing? What about special ed? And we meet and we talk about every one of those kids instead of just saying, well, that's special ed, that's a special ed concern. We meet and talk about all of them, and we claim them all. The other thing I want to talk about real quick is our RBTL team. We have kind of meshed that into RBTL/student support. We meet bi-weekly, and so I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but we collaborate, RBTL and RTI collaborate because really we have to remove all those barriers for their success.
And just to add to that for the next slide, growth, because I know we're running short on time, we are doing a pretty good job after looking at our data of growing our high achieving students, which is interesting because that's not a really easy thing to do, but we're doing that and we're doing a pretty good job of it. Where we're struggling is growing our novice students, and so the numbers you can see for yourself are sort of staggering there in our growth areas. So when we drill down into who are those students who are scoring in the novice range, a lot of those students include students in our subgroup populations or our GAP students. And so the implementation of skill-focused interventions to address specific areas of need, that is really what we're doing to address our growth data. And then the weekly looking at interventions and monitoring data, looking at growth, and then the same thing with the common assessment data there. I picture it like a piece of Swiss cheese with a bunch of holes, and we're really just trying to fill those holes for each of those students so that they can have the complete picture and then be closer to proficiency. And then the next slide there is transition ready. I think if I could point you in the direction, one piece of data there, it's number 2 on the school growth areas, and that's 33.3% of all 5th grade students from last year are proficient in all tested areas. Now, when we drill down into that, it's been made very clear to us that our biggest deficit is our writing. And so writing has come through loud and clear in all of our data as a significant area of need. And so sort of what we're doing right now, I like to call it an in-house needs assessment, because that's sort of where we are in terms of figuring out we need to address writing, but we have to know what the problem is first. So we have we have focused our PPR walks to go in during writing instruction to assess what we're seeing. Is our writing instruction not high quality? Is our writing instruction not devoted enough time? Is writing instruction the first thing that gets tossed out the window when teachers are running out of time? And then we meet as an administrative team every Wednesday to corroborate that data and really see what our findings are. And what we're finding is it's kind of all of the above. And so we are knee deep right now, and I've had a lot of conversations with Melina about it recently, about creating and putting in place a writing plan. And it really is going to be an undertaking, because it's not just a Band-Aid for our tested grades. It's really getting in from the foundation in those early primary grades and developing our teachers in their writing instruction, and then watching that filter up into the upper grades and follow the students. So it's kind of a daunting issue at this problem, but it's one we're ready to tackle because it's necessary.
So the next part is opportunity to access, and what I really want to focus on here is that if kids aren't coming to school, or if they are late, or if they're being picked up every day, they can't learn. So it doesn't matter what strategies we put in place, it doesn't matter anything unless they are at school. So that's been a really big focus this year of our RBTL team. We have a new RBTL interventionist, and she has been great so far in helping us bring this gap together. But I just want to say that we are really focusing on chronic absenteeism, and so we have notified parents if their child was chronically absent last year, which means 15 or more days absent. And then we're meeting with them, with RBTL interventionists, administration, teachers, and we're really trying to put interventions in place to make sure that those students can get to school. And a lot of times, someone else said that earlier, it's the parents that are not getting them to school. So we're really trying to work hard with the parents to help them understand how important it is their child is at school.
Do you find that there's a subgroup that's chronically absent? Is it like English learners, or is it?
No, it is not actually. The only pattern I would see is that our special needs students are on there. But that is one thing. We have 4 special education unit classrooms in our building, and so a lot of them go to therapies that are outside of school, but they are taken out of school. So our chronic absenteeism is high, but some of those are things that we know are necessary. And so at the beginning of the year, I sent a letter to all of our parents in the unit classrooms and sent the medical exempt form, because we want to work with them. We don't want them to take that away from their child, because we know that's how they're going to be successful. But when we really broke it down and looked at who is chronically absent and who isn't, I thought it would be a lot of our students in the units, and it wasn't. They are, but it's not our big percentage. So we're pulling that data biweekly to identify new kids who are chronically absent as well.
Did you have another?
I'm sorry, what?
How many students?
Total? We have about 1,000 students.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
having only 5% in there with the behavior issue.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
Yes.
What's your minority number? She said what's
I didn't hear the question, sorry.
minority number, percentage?
I don't know the exact percentage of minority students.
Free and reduced, or?
Free and reduced is 54%.
54.
Yeah.
Transient.
I'm not sure what our transient number is either.
It is higher, yeah, but I don't know the number.
Don't feel bad about not knowing the answer. That
Yeah.
tells me you're not concentrating on it, you're concentrating
Exactly.
on
I will point out though
If I
that
don't
we
know,
have
I'm gonna tell you I don't know.
we
I'm not
have
gonna
met
make it
our attendance goal for the last 2 months. Once they put that up on the board for us this year, that meant a lot to us. So we're really focusing on that. So we're happy about that.
So what are we celebrating? Overall, our rate of proficient distinguished students is above the state average by at least 10 percentage points in all tested areas, with the exception of writing. We have been a proficient school for the last 3 years. And then from 2016 to 17, we did increase our overall rate of proficient distinguished students in all tested academic areas. And then I'd be remiss if I left out number 4. We were really putting a lot of eggs in this RTI basket and the restructuring of our RTI. But I think it really is key to reaching all of our students and making sure that we're giving all students what they need across the board, in all subgroups, all tiers, in all content areas. So we have already begun that implementation, and we had our first round of data meetings, 2 in the last couple weeks, and we have I just put that last line there, that initial analysis of intervention data indicates that we are growing students. We've already made quite a bit of moves within our intervention groups, and kids have moved out of intervention based on the data and what we've had so far. So we're celebrating that. Any other questions? We're out of time. A lot of things. River Ridge is a unique school because we are so big. We are the largest elementary school in Kenton County, and we do have a very diverse student population. 1,000 kids. We have 177 students with disabilities. We have almost 100 English language learners. We have 54% free and reduced. Those things all create barriers for us, but they also make us a very unique school. I appreciate the diversity, and that's one of the things that makes me proud to be not just at River Ridge, but the principal, because not only are we working really hard to meet the needs of all students, but we're working with a diverse group of students, and it's just a monumental task. Natalie and I were talking one day at dismissal, and we were kind of standing there watching the buses roll out, and she and I both had a moment where we felt really proud, and we're like, we're doing this. Like, we're responsible for 19 school buses pulling out of this parking lot and getting these kids where they need to go. And I feel that, honestly, on a daily basis, just walking through the halls of River Ridge. I try not to let that creep in too much because that can be incredibly overwhelming, but we try really just to focus on the day-to-day actions and what we're doing. But I'm proud to be at River Ridge, and this is the only place I've worked in Kenton County, and it's a great school.
What do you hope to tell us next year?
What I hope to tell you next year is I hope to tell you that RTI worked and that we are starting to see growth within our subgroup or gap populations, because that's really that's our biggest barrier right now. So
When do you plan on putting that writing plan in place?
Well, that's a great question. Potentially in January. I'm considering doing a 30, 60, 90-day plan because we are going to start that in the middle of the year. And so we need to be very strategic about what we implement, how we implement it. Our teachers have a lot of new things that are happening to them this year, not just with our RTI structure, but with the plan of excellence and new leadership all the way around. So we're trying not to inundate them with new things, but it's something that it's a necessary. So
which one of our ladies is your supervisor?
Melina.
She's always there for you.
And she has been there for me, and she has been extremely helpful. And I agree with what Tony said earlier. She is very responsive to our needs and to my questions, so we appreciate that.
28 years in, all in Kenton County, and I'm proud to say that I've been in Kenton County for 28 years. And Miss Mott, Kim Mott, and I have been together now for 6 years. It's hard to believe. It's been a long haul, but we are now distinguished. We are a distinguished school, which was our ultimate goal when we started at Kaywood together 6 years ago. It's been a journey. It's taken a lot of grit, but we got it. We got grit, and that is our theme this year. And it's taken a lot of changing of the culture at our school, implementing a lot of new things, and really bringing our teachers on board. And now they're higher than ever. They're ready to move even further. They're ready to go even further up because they know where it's possible. So I want to thank you for listening to us today, and I'm going to start with talking about proficiency and our areas of strength and where we still need to grow and our goals for that. So the areas that we're the most proud of are definitely writing and math. Because in the area of writing, we were 62.6% of our students were either proficient or distinguished, which was an increase of 23% from the previous year, and it's been very intentional that we've made those gains. Also, a big strength for us, this has always been a strength, but we're even seeing it more, is math. All grade levels are above the state average, with our total number of proficient and distinguished students being 65.3% as compared to 49.1% in the state. And also, math has been a big strength for our GAP, and we, as you all probably know, we do have a large GAP group, a large EL population, 15%, and we're 61% free and reduced lunch. So, and we are also very transient. I don't have that number as transiency either, but so we're very proud of that growth in GAP and math. The GAP group scored 59.1% proficient and distinguished as compared to 65.3% of all students in math. So the gap is very close to closing in math. So we're proud of that. Now, where do we need to grow? Reading is still our #1 priority. We have seen some growth in reading in pockets, but we do think we've got some things in place. And like Jenna kind of mentioned, we have to, or maybe it was Tina, we have to start from the foundation. So we've been trying to put things in that we start in the primary to move so there's consistency across the school. And it's taken, 5 years to do that, because you have to start at the basics, and now those kids are getting that when they start in kindergarten, and it's a lot easier for our teachers when they come in and they know those strategies and then they know that terminology and that vocabulary. But we do need to increase in the area of reading, because our proficient and distinguished students in reading was only 59%, which is below the district average, and that's not acceptable to us. The number of proficient and distinguished students in the area of language mechanics, which kind of goes right there with reading, is 53.2%, which is also significantly below the district average of 64.5%. So we want to increase the proficient and distinguished students in the area of reading to 67.8% by 2019. So what are we going to do that? Last year we started this, and it has been amazing. We are going to continue our use of the iReads program for all students in grades K first, and then as an intervention for identified students in 2nd grade, because we really have found that they just need phonics. We've got to get that phonics. They have to get that rich, and they have to learn that phonemic awareness. So we've really worked on that. We also are implementing a weekly Friday assessments for all students in the area of reading to consistently monitor improvement on standards. And we recognize students weekly who score distinguished on our school-wide GRIT board, which that's our theme this year, is we've got GRIT. So teachers can nominate students for what we call GRIT awards. We take their pictures, give them certificates, and put them on a big board that's outside of our hallway. And it has been amazing how many kids they're so excited. Last week was so neat when we were having parent-teacher conferences, and they'd bring their parents by. There I am. Look at me. I'm on the GRIT board. So that's been a great incentive for our kids. We also are continuing the implementation of Mastery Connect, the Mastery Connect program, in grades 3 to 5, so that in order to measure and track mastery of standards. And then finally, this has been something that we have found that has been very successful, and we listed it as continued leveled reading classes in grades 2 to 5, but it's really flexibly leveled groupings based on map data. So we look at our map data and we flexibly group those kids so that they can get those interventions that they need during their reading block. And we've also increased our walks a lot this year, really looking at what we're doing. I'm now going to let Kim talk about GAP.
Okay, so as Kelly shared, we are really beginning to close the gap in math, and we can see it and feel it, and we're really super excited about it. So you can see that our non-duplicated gap group was 59.1% proficient and distinguished, which is 18.9% higher than the state average. We're also closing the gap in writing, and our non-duplicated was 54.2% proficient and distinguished, which is 16.4% higher than the state average.
We also really closed the gap in the area of social studies, and I truly believe that the reason we did that is because of our intentional focus last year on writing. Social studies requires a lot of writing, and I think the reason we saw that increase was because of that. So 0% of students with disabilities scored novice in the area of social studies. 50% of our students with disabilities scored actually proficient or distinguished. So we were very pleased with those results. However, that being said, we do have an area that is strategic that we need to really focus on, and that is we have 15% of our population that is Hispanic. 89 of our kids are currently being serviced for EL, and those are the kids that are not performing well in the area of reading. So this is our target focus this year. 80% of our EL students in 3rd grade scored novice or apprentice in reading, and that is absolutely not acceptable. In 4th grade, 100% of EL students scored novice or apprentice in reading. So you can tell why that then is our GAP goal, which is to increase the number of proficient and distinguished EL students in the area of reading from our current 9.1% to 48.3%. It's a lofty goal, but I think we can do it because we now know this is what we need to do. We've known it for quite some time, but we just haven't had the help that we needed, and now I think that we do have it. We have hired a Title I assistant to work with our EL students and families. That is her sole job. So she is working for us only 12 hours a week, but she has already made a difference. She's not only working with kids, but she is actually communicating with families on a daily basis. We are also using our district personnel. Linda Vila Pasione has worked with us on some outreach programs with families, and she communicates with Kelly and I daily about, and it's mainly about, hey, we need to get, Jose some homework help. And parents don't understand when the homework comes home. They don't understand what it is. So we need help with communicating with families. So that's what we are focusing on. We also realized after analyzing all of our common assessments that the area that the EL population struggles with is vocabulary. So we are doing a school-wide emphasis on vocabulary. We are going to use lanyards that have 10 words per week, and all the kids will walk around wearing their lanyard with the 10 words that they're working on. And then you, as the adult, can come up and ask them about their words. So that's going to be a school-wide focus that we are doing on vocabulary.
And they love it.
Yeah,
The kids
they do.
love
They really
it.
love it. I mean, they want to tell you their words. So
10 words like per grade level, or is it?
it's like sight words, and it might be individualized with the student most likely, but we have sight word expectations for each grade level, so we're really honing in on those 10 words a week. Then the other thing that we're doing with our special education team, we sat down at our data analysis, and our special education team sat down and went literally student by student. And we just looked at where kids scored in both reading and math in all the areas, and we looked at and we decided absolutely what we were going to do with each kid. But now we're meeting on those kids bi-weekly. We have our special ed team meeting. So
We only have 1 minute.
Oh,
Melina says we have 1 minute. So
I'll skip that part.
we only have 1 minute, so we're going to kind of jump ahead a little bit and talk about our transition because, not transition, I'm sorry, opportunity and access, because I would like to talk a little bit about that. Mainly I want to talk about, everybody's kind of talked about their chronic absenteeism, and it was 6.57%. And as I was listening to Jenna, and I had realized it the other day, ours is also the same thing. Most of the largest majority of those chronic absenteeism kids are our special ed kids. So we really need to look at why are they the ones that are chronically absent. And we have also worked a lot. We are, our admin meetings on Wednesdays, the entire first part of it is all looking at attendance. Our RBTL consultant from the district, which is Melissa Back, she's been great. And we are talking about those chronically absent meetings, and we've already scheduled and had 2 family meetings, and we've got 2 more scheduled coming up to talk to those families about how are we going to get your kids to school, because we can't help the kids if they're not at school. So we're doing home visits with our school resource officer. I had a parent the other day call me, are you going to send that resource officer to my house again? Because my kid really is sick this time. And so it's working though. It is working though.
It's working.
Because
They don't
they
wanna see
don't
him.
want the police officer to come to the house. So I hate that you have to go to those extremes, but sometimes that's what you have to do.
Did you send him?
I did not send him because she told me
really-
that they were coming in with a doctor's note. They had been to urgent care and they would have a doctor's note. So we're trying to really work on that. And we also are really trying to work on our office referrals, especially in the area of our bus disturbances. That's the largest portion of our, it's 41%, which it's not quite half, but it's a large portion. So we've worked a lot on some PBIS strategies with bus drivers. We have a meeting with them. We go over the expectations. We do an incentive program, this is our third year doing it, which is called Donuts with Drivers. So they earn a compliments, and the bus that gets around the donut first, then they have donuts with their driver on a Friday. So last week we had a tie, so we had 2 buses that got to have donuts with their driver.
I love it.
So that's a great thing. And since we're almost out of time, I am going to share our celebrations real quickly. Obviously, our 2 biggest areas of celebration are writing and math. You know, just to have a 23% increase in writing is amazing. But like I said, it's been very intentional. And also the math increases, and to have all of our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders all scored above the state average in math. 65%, 62.4%, and 69.2%. So we're proud of that. And then finally, we are very proud that we are distinguished. So it's been a long journey, and it's taken a lot of passion, determination, perseverance, and grit. So, any questions?
One thing about grit, I feel like I've been reading articles lately about
Yes.
this generation of kids lacking a bit of grit.
Yes, they
Mhm.
do.
And stick-to-itiveness. So I
We-
really, I've been reading about it.
We actually read the book. So there's a book by Angela Duckworth called Grit. And so the staff had to read that novel this summer. It's not a novel, but it's like an informational book. But it
Right.
was very moving for us, because we do realize that was an issue with our kids. So it's been the best theme we've had, because it has really motivated.
Yeah, and I think
everybody.
the kids really are starting to understand it and starting to realize, you know, Tony does his novice roundup, and I think that they understand that if you don't have grit, you are going to be novice. And so they're very proud when they're able to show us something that is worthy of a grit award. And I think with the clients that we have to have that, because they don't always get it at home.
We're setting up for success in middle school and high school.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
So what makes you most proud to be a
Well, it's interesting because I was trying to think about that as I heard you asking that question to everybody. There's so many things that make me proud, but I think probably the thing that makes me most proud is the staff and their passion that they have for every child. Because we do have, I know everybody said the ones in front of us have said they have a diverse population. We do as well, and they have a passion for every child. And, you know, you can't get to where we are now if they didn't have that passion. And we're at 605. 605, yeah. And so the school, you know, was built for 425. So although the building's all right, but the cafeteria is a little small. It's crazy in there.
Yeah, sorry.
Math being such a strong point for you all.
Yes.
As a building, that 0% of novice 5th graders making growth.
Yes, it's bothersome.
Very bothersome.
It's such a strong area.
It is a very strong area.
Is that blip, or is it?
I was shocked to see it. It did not make sense to me. But,
It doesn't.
But what we are doing is we are looking at those kids who are scoring novice, and we are putting place interventions for those kids. So we're just naming and claiming, because now I got to figure out why that's happening.
Right.
So with those weekly assessments, we are going to start novice roundup in January, copying a little off White's Tower, but I think our teachers are finally on board with that and understanding why we need to assess more frequently and really honing in on the
I think that's
novice.
been a struggle. That has been one struggle for us with our staff. They really struggled with identifying kids and letting those kids know about it. And I think they've finally gotten to the point where they understand that, you know what, if that's where they are, that's where they are. And they have to be a part of the process too. It can't just be us pulling them along. They've got to give a little too. I don't care if they're 5 or they're 15. They've got to be a part of that process. So yes, Josh, we were very surprised to see that 0% because math has always been strong for us. So.
What do you hope to say to us next year?
Well, we want to be a school of distinction. So we've made distinguished, but I know that's not going to be a classification anymore.
So we'll be
So we'll be
5-star.
5-star. Our plan is to be 5-star. And we want to say to you that I think more than anything that we've made some huge gains in reading, especially with our English language learners. So.
I think, like you said, your culture, you're working at it.
Yeah, we
In
are.
6 years, you've set a new culture, a new tone.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, we do.
We're
I
proud of
personally love to focus on grit. Even some of our kids achieve high levels, when they go to college or the workforce, they lack grit, they struggle. So thank you, folks.
Well, and I love it because what we're seeing too, Dr. Webb, is that the teachers are really recognizing some of those kids that don't always get recognized because of the progress they've made. But those kids that are higher performing, they know that they are going to have to push a little bit harder because that teacher's really looking for even something more out of them.
Not looking at just the score,
Yeah,
looking at how hard you're working.
right. All right, thank you.
Well, good afternoon. I'd like to thank the Board of Education and Dr. Webb for being here today to hear about our school and how we're doing so we can share our progress. We're very proud to be here and we're very proud of our students and teachers' hard work. And I'd also like to thank both the Board of Education and our district leadership for all the wonderful support that we get. There's never a time where if we ask for help that we don't get it very quickly, so we really appreciate that. So I know we have a little short time today, so I'm going to try to talk really fast. And again, if I talk too fast, just raise your hand, slow me down. Starting with our proficiency. Overall, we were extremely excited with our overall achievement. We went from 80.6 in 2016 to 87.2. And so our achievement was above state average in reading, writing, math, and our math proficient distinguished went up, and so we were like all over it looks really, really good. And then we started looking at the data and drilling down, and we're like, oh boy, we do have some areas that we really need to kind of focus on. Our writing has been an area of emphasis the last few years, and we were just kind of surprised to see the drop this year. We actually went from 59.4% proficient distinguished this year, and we were down from 61.7% the previous year. So we do think we have some factors identified, and I'll talk about that when we talk about our strategies. Reading, we had 15.2% of all of our students who scored novice. I mean, that's way too high. So again, that's an area that just kind of jumped out at us, and we think we have some strategies in place. So we're going to really focus on that area. Language mechanics, our novice just more than doubled, and again just surprised me very, very much because I've seen the instruction, I've seen what the teachers do, and I see the work. It's very rigorous, but it really shocked me to see that drop. So we do have some goals that we're going to be working on, and the goal for our combined reading and math, we'd like to move up from 73.1 in 2017 to 77.6 in 2019. So that gives us 2 years. We'll break that down into a little more manageable chunks each year, but those will be some areas of emphasis for us. For our strategies, first of all, with reading and math, we are going to be we've actually started our weekly assessment program. We are going to jump on that train because I think the piece that we were missing is while we're doing a lot of assessment, what are we doing with the assessment results? And that's the piece that wasn't really happening. So we're going to put those assessment results under the microscope. We're going to look at each of them child by child. We are going to be talking about those in our weekly PLCs, and not just about what are your scores, but what are you going to do for this child right here? So again, the naming and claiming, but we're going to talk strategies, and we're going to be reviewing results. So again, we have been doing RTI all along, so we've been monitoring progress, and we look at the types of interventions we do, and if they don't pay off, then we look at what are we going to do differently to meet that child's needs. We have started something new this year that's kind of exciting. We are focusing on growth mindset and meaningful engagement school-wide. Because we kind of looked at our population, we have about 53% free and reduced in our school. We have about 16% of our students who have disabilities. And we thought, how do these children learn the best? And so we're reading a book called Engaging Students with Poverty in Mind School-Wide. And we talk about it every month in our staff meetings. And we're using those strategies in the classroom. And one of the biggest ones is that meaningful engagement. So you give the students a rigorous task, give them opportunities to work together collaboratively and find ways like Kagan strategies that engage the students, and it involves them in their learning. So it's more interesting to them and they want to learn, and then they find they can retain it that way because they've actually been involved in their learning rather than just having someone give it to them. So move on to GAP. Our GAP students, our social studies GAP rose a lot. Well, our proficient and distinguished went from 39.4% to 76.7%. And that is proficient and distinguished students in the GAP. That excited me because in that classroom, she's doing exactly the things that we have been advocating this year, that high level of student engagement, the things that the students are doing together, working through problems together, real world type of problems. And you could see it worked. Another thing that we did in social studies was departmentalizing. We had social studies was kind of getting the short end of the stick in 5th grade. They have so much to cover that I think they were focusing a lot on reading and math and writing, and social studies wasn't getting its fair shake. So being departmentalized, they're getting a lot of time now to work on that content area. Our math gap, our percent of proficient distinguished rose a little bit from 53.1 to 56%. And our gap, proficient distinguished in all subjects, is higher than the state average. But growth areas. Our reading gap score decreased this past year. It went down from 58.5 to 54.8. And our writing gap score decreased, and our language mechanics score decreased. And so you see this as reading, writing, language, they're all connected, and our students had a very difficult time with them. So when we look at what we're going to do to improve these, we're looking at the weekly assessments again because we're going to be targeting each of those students and looking at what each student needs to move forward and to master those standards. And to me, that's really key because if we keep accumulating standards that they're not mastering, by the time we get to the end of the year, there's no way to go back and fill all those gaps. So we'll be filling those gaps as we go along and as we identify them. We have created a watch list of students that are in the gap. We're going to be closely monitoring their assessment, their progress, their IEP data, and looking at that in our PLCs and our RTI meetings, also our special education meetings. And we're going to develop plans for what are we going to do to move those students forward and help them. And again, if what we're doing isn't working, let's switch it up and try something different. The increased use of student engagement strategies and growth mindset approach is taking place in every classroom. So it is the focus of our instructional walks and coaching. So we're looking for things that are involving the students rather than making them passive learners. We want them actively learning. We are providing the feedback with the teachers, and we're kind of excited. We started something new. We're using our technology more. We are going to be doing a feedback form that's modeled after some of the other schools that are trying it, and we'll do it electronically so that when we do our walks, we can provide our feedback, and then the teachers, it makes it a two-way conversation because there's an area that they can provide us their reflections back. And so it's just an ongoing conversation with us, and I think that'll really help. And our goal for our GAP students for our combined reading and math is we'd like to move from 65.8% in 2017 to 71.5% in 2019. And then in growth, our reading percentile growth increased quite a bit overall. So we're just looking at the percentile growth of students that scored at the 40th percentile or above. We went up in that area. Same with math, and then our reading, math, and combined percentile was higher than the state averages. But the categorical growth decreased, so that was kind of a conundrum. But the categories of students moving forward into another category, like from novice to apprentice, that decreased a little bit, not markedly. in 2016 to 69.6. So it wasn't a lot, but it didn't keep pace with the percentile growth that we saw. And our reading categorical growth decreased from 71.7 to 70. Our overall growth score, when we looked at comparing to last year, went up, but when we compared it to 2015, it was actually a little bit lower. So it was kind of a little jagged up and down. So the growth hasn't been as stable. We'd like to see that continued growth going straight up, but we're going up and down a little bit. So what we're going to do about that is we're differentiating the lessons in reading and math in all grade levels to grow students, because we want to grow all the kids that need the extra challenge, that need to be pushed upwards. We need to continue to provide them challenges to do that. So we're using level text and differentiated learning centers for that, and we're using a lot of adaptive software that meets the children where they are and helps move them forward. Another thing that it just hurt me so much in my heart when I was doing it. I was looking at all of their individual reports that they got from K-Prep, and I like to write little notes on them before I hand them out to the students, and then they know that the principals looked at them, and I actually try to meet with each student prior to conferences and talk to them about how they did. The list of children that were 1 or 2 points away from the next highest performance level was incredible. It was just you were so close. So if they would have just all been able to bump it up 1 or 2 points, it just would have been, our achievement would really have gone up in all areas. So I made a list of, I call them bubble kids, because they're sitting on the bubble, and I've shared this with the teachers, and we're closely monitoring their progress and providing lots of opportunities for them for enrichment and remediation, and also for some of them, if it's an effort issue, we're trying to help them learn to have more effort in what they do, because if they've got the capability, we want them to show what they know. And again, the increased use of student engagement strategies and growth mindset approach in every classroom. So we're just using that feedback from the teachers. We're really working on giving specific feedback to help students grow. So instead of just saying, yeah, you did good work, great job, we're saying, you used your strategies, and I can tell that you've grown from the last test that you took. And so help the children focus more on the process of learning and the process of growing, rather than just the result that they get at the end. We're doing a lot of wrong answer analysis. So even in the primary, when they've taken an assessment and they've missed questions, they get their test back at the end, and they can go back and look at what did they do wrong and what should they change, and then they need to justify their answer. Why did they change it, or what would be the correct answer and why? So it helps them to really internalize that learning, and not just say, well, you missed it, and move on. They can think about why they missed it and what would be correct, so we're kind of correcting their misconceptions. And then transition ready, focusing on these scores, we were just really tickled with our social studies scores. They were just really high. They 85.7% proficient distinguished, and the 5th grade math really knocked it out of the park too. They were 71.7 proficient distinguished, and 5th grade reading was 67.7%. Language mechanics is a growth area for us again, and that's tested. It was tested last year in the 4th grade. So we're looking at those student engagement activities, and maybe language mechanics needs to be more engaging to students, particularly for the students that we're most concerned about, the students in our gap. Maybe it just wasn't engaging enough for them, and they just weren't able to retain that information. And then with writing, we want to move up in our writing, but it's not just a 5th grade issue. It's across the board. It's our program. So we need to go back and really look at our school-wide vertical alignment. We did some great things a few years ago, and then I think over time, some things have kind of frittered away as new things have come on board. We just need to go back and tighten it up again. So we're going to look at our school-wide on-demand writing program and make sure it's vertically aligned, to make sure that we are increasing time for writing in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, because we did departmentalize in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, but that kind of left writing with less time. So we tweaked our schedule this year to give more concentrated time for writing each day. We're going to be monitoring the school-wide writing plan in each classroom, making sure the teachers are monitoring, or that they're giving their writing lessons with fidelity and staying focused on the best practices in writing. We also want to do some more standardization because we have noticed that, and this is kind of across the board, not just with writing, but we've noticed that sometimes in one grade level they'll call it one thing and then they call it a different thing in another, or they teach rounding one way in one grade level, rounding a different way, and we think we need to do a little more vertical alignment, vertical planning. So we're seeking opportunities to figure out how can we facilitate that. And now that we've gotten our revised budget allocations, I'm going to look at possibly even bringing in some substitutes a few days so that it gives the teachers time to plan with the teachers, especially being departmentalized. If you have one third grade math teacher, one fourth grade math teacher, and a fifth grade math teacher, it would be nice for them to meet with one another and look at the flow and make sure that it's vertically aligned. And we just want to standardize things because especially with our GAP students, they don't do well with change. When the teachers are doing things differently from year to year, it confuses them. So we're looking at how can we standardize it and make it everything more vertically aligned. And then we had a really good program called Principals Prompt that we were doing with On Demand Schoolwide, and that one kind of, again, it just kind of got diluted over time. So we're going to go back and tighten that back up again so that when we start back in January, we'll have a good, robust writing program across all grade levels for On Demand. Now I'm going to turn it over to our Associate Principal, Kelly Smith.
And I get to talk about opportunity and access today, and this is an area where I think we have a lot of strengths and we're making a lot of progress. One of those is with our attendance rate. Last year we were at 96.5%, and we want to do better. We've been working on this area this year. We have a very detailed attendance plan, and right now we're at 97.69% attendance because we want to get the kids in the door and learning every day. That's super important. We will also we think we provide our students a very rich curriculum. We give them a lot of access to arts and music and library and health and PE. We just had our Fun Arts Night last week where the students got to present their strengths to their parents and families. In this area, it was a packed house, standing room only, and the kids did a phenomenal job. We're also working on getting more technology in the classroom so that the teachers can just increase personalized learning, utilize Google Classroom, and just enhance their instruction with technology. We still have some areas for growth. One of those is our chronic absenteeism rate. Last year it was at 7.5%, and that's a lot. That's kids missing at least 10% of the school year. So we have a great team in place, and we're putting a lot of interventions in place and trying to educate our families about the importance of attendance and what chronic absenteeism does to the academic achievement of students. And right now we are looking at 3.5% chronic absenteeism. So I think we're making a lot of growth in that area. I think our plan is working and we're getting those students into school. One of the areas that surprised us a lot was our percentage of students with office referrals. We're at 15.6%. That was higher than kind of we had thought until we started running those numbers, and we were like, whoa. So we are really looking at our PBIS instruction. We want to utilize the data that we can pull from Infinite Campus and decide where these problems are occurring. Is it the bus? Is it the classroom? Is it a certain time of day, a certain day? And then we want to be able to be proactive and put some procedures in place to help reduce those. And this year, one of our focuses is really implementing and improving our Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions for students who might need a little extra behavior support. So that's one of our areas of focus. And then moving forward, some of the things that we think that we are doing great with on our celebrations page is, third year in a row, we are scoring distinguished. That is fabulous. 2 of those 3 years, we are a school of distinction, so we're very proud of that. This past year, 100% NAPD in social studies, and the first in the state, so we're also very proud of that. And not up there, but I think super important is we are a 5-star preschool program, and we are working really hard to get these students in the door. We have challenged Ellen to find a place for them now. So I think we're doing a great job reaching out to our families and finding these kids so that we can get them in, because we have a fabulous program, and we want kids to be able to benefit from that program. So we've had a lot of great success, and we're looking forward to continuing. We have nowhere to go but up. So,
so if you take something like that 100 NAPD score, first in the state for that, is that a is Pioneer just doing, has a wonderful social studies curriculum, or is it you just got really outstanding teachers with social studies? Is it both? Because one we can replicate, one we can't. So.
I think it's both. That we do teach social studies at every grade level, and all the teachers are teaching their standards that they're supposed to be teaching. But I think the big difference was this past year was going to that departmentalized model. And our teacher in 5th grade now has an 80 minutes a class, so she has each 5th grade student for 80 minutes a day. She also does science as well as social studies, so she's flipping back and forth. But she does spend a lot of time on the social studies, and she's always been very strong in accountable talk and really probing the students' knowledge, but she really ramped it up this past year with collaborative engagement activities. So, and she kind of we revised a few of our timelines, but she revised her social studies timeline to really concentrate all her economic instruction right up front. So she's teaching economics up front, so that as she's going through the different time periods and different history, she can draw back into that the economics and discuss it as, cause and effect for things that happened, and the students understand it better because they've got the background in it.
So was last year the first year you did departmentalized?
Yes, yes.
I think she has a great system of flashbacks too, just keeping that information current and in front of students. So what they learned, in September, they're still continuing to review throughout the year. And then because it's a lot of facts and a lot of people and places and names, and she's keeping those very current and in front of the students.
She must have a passion for it, too.
She does. She really does.
So what makes you most proud to be a Pioneer?
I think I've heard some people mention it, and it's at their schools, and I'm really glad to hear that it's the same as so many of our Kenton County schools. But it's about each child, and that the whole child comes first, and that we're not just about trying to get good scores from our students. That we really are looking at their needs, and what are they coming in with? What do they need help with? What needs need to be addressed before they can be learners in the school? And there's just truly an attitude. It's not like the teachers are like, well, that's her child. No, they're all our children, and so we a real community about. It's really like a family. We nurture and take care of each other, and work for those children's needs. And the staff is just incredible. They would just go above and beyond and do whatever it takes for those kids. So.
I have heard a lot of that today about reducing barriers to learning. That's really
Yeah, that relationship piece is so important. It really has to come before anything else, I think.
So what do you hope to say to us next year?
Well, next year I hope all those bubble kids score 1 or 2 points higher. I mean, seriously, I heard Tony say it, and I'm like, I want to be one of the top 10 schools in the state too. But more than that, I really want each of our students to be working at his or her potential, and I want to see those gap scores decreasing. I really want to see closer correlation between our gap scores and our just our general population score. There really isn't an excuse for the disparities that we're seeing. And we're running everything through the 5-star model this year. So our goal is to be a 5-star school. And I know that they're still tweaking the assessment accountability system for the state. But I would like to next year be able to say, if our 5-star system was in place, we would be there because we've done everything we need to do to get there.
They're a great community.
They certainly.
Comment for you. You've done a great presentation, but I had some concern about one comment.
What's that?
You're looking at aligning a program so there's less change systematically for the student.
Mm-hmm.
Yet in the 21st century, students' ability and people's ability to succeed in business is going to be determined by their ability to accept change and relearn.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have some concern if I'm not going to work with the student to help them learn how to change, is that going to impact them later in life? That's my opinion.
Well, I'd like to address that. I don't think that we're not going to teach the children about change or about how to adapt to change. It's just that our instructional methods need to be consistent so that from year to year it's not a different thing, or from class to class, even right now with them departmentalizing, that it's not different. Research has shown that in order to do the higher level thinking, you've got to master the basics. And once the basics become fluent for you, it's much easier to take them and apply them to different situations. So, by the time they're getting up into the upper elementary, we're starting to take those skills and really apply them to a lot of different scenarios. But especially when they're first coming into us and they're young and in the primary, we've got to really cement those basic skills with them. Of course, challenging them because they have to be doing rigorous thinking along those lines as well. But in order to prepare them to take on the challenges that they are going to be receiving, we have to get them to understand what the standards at their grade level. And if we are constantly changing things up too much, it just causes confusion for them before they've mastered those basics. Okay. All right. Thank you all very much. Thank you for your nice long day today. We appreciate you listening to all of our schools.